Good evening, everybody. It's Monday night, Monday the 14th of August. And so far with us on the panel, we have Ceres from Holland, Judith from Israel will be joining, and we've got Robert Foertsch from America. Anyway,
Thanks,
my feed's going. Every time I do that, I forget to turn it off. Anyway, welcome to everybody who's watching and to everybody in the chat room. And Robert, you're showing us something.
Well, yeah, and I just found it's. Oh, okay. There's a echo in there. Is that you, Ceres?
Me with the microphone on. I'll turn mine off. You go for it, Robert.
Okay. Yeah, the echo's gone now. What I was fascinated with most of my life would be the water, and I didn't realize exactly what I was noticing, but there was a contrast in what we were told and what we see. I always liked the way that water was reflective and in that, and then the other thing is I enjoyed swimming and playing in the water. And then what I realized, about a year and a half ago, when I started looking for the curve, I couldn't find it. I couldn't find the curvature of the globe. We were presented the globe in school and on movies and all of that. Where does the flat water ever turn into this? And there's a whole lot of flat geography too. I've driven from coast to coast in the United States here, and I've gone over some mountains, and then I would come back down. And when I would get next to the water, now, since I actually was born again about 3 years ago, it will be on Halloween or Reformation Day, October 31st of 2014. What happened shortly after that, I was presented the reality of a life with a lot of the television removed from it. I just didn't have an appetite for it. And so what ended up happening was I spent a lot of time at the beach next to the ocean talking to people. And what I found was that the water was just very beautiful and attractive. It attracts people from all over the world that want to visit the ocean or relocate and live next to the ocean. So that's largely what ends up happening. And when I saw different shots like that one that I had, or this one right here, this was on when we celebrate Thanksgiving here in the United States. And it was just such a beautiful mirror with the localized sun, the crepuscular rays. And the way that I have my room set up is this window right here actually looks out over the ocean. And the sun typically comes up from over there. And then based on the different mirrors that I have in the room, what's interesting is I'll be able to see what the clouds look like on a given morning. And the other thing that's pretty fascinating about it, as the sun approaches, this particular window will have quite a bit more light through there than this one will. And then the different structure within the glass between the thermal panes serve as a really good marker to let me see how the stars and the sun and the moon move. Now I don't see the sun much from here because I'm out in it during the daytime, but as I'll notice the stars in relationship to the fixed structure within the windows, it's pretty amazing to me. And we've got, like, for example, this water right here. I can tell that this piece of furniture is a little bit tipped because the border shows there and not on this side here. So what we have is water that has certain physics and properties that I've shown on my photography, like in the jug there, that's perfectly level in there. And that's just what that'll do, and it would match up with the horizon. Now, in the context of what we're looking at, this right here is a Rand McNally World Signature Edition map. And, you know, we see a whole lot of land there, which I find pretty interesting, because when looking at the globe from this perspective, let me show you here, the back side of the globe. Okay, this would be, let's say, the front side. There's land, a lot of land, and then the back side is almost all water. Then we've got Australia hanging out down here, supposedly upside down in relationship to the United States over here. And then, you know, we've got South America and South Africa. And they're not talking, you know, they're not going to talk about this much. And how would they, you know, they're not upside down. They know it. One of the shots that I had, I took the globe and I actually put it in the toilet bowl. I just put it in there. You know, there's not a magical force that's stopping toilet water from flying out on people south of the equator. That's absurd. And I didn't even think to question it until my friend Nigel Bakes said, "Hey, where's the curve?" And I thought, well, I'm gonna look for it. I couldn't find it. 8 inches per mile squared. And more recently, what I've done is taken some photographs of the skyline in Myrtle Beach. Now, that's in the neighborhood of between 20 and 30 miles away, depending on vantage point and what I can see. And so there's missing hundreds of feet of curvature. Now, that may not sound like a big deal. However, when we're talking about symmetry of photographs, let's say, of the look of this perfect parallel mirror that is, hundreds of feet of missing curvature is obvious. So I appreciate the work that Joshua Nowicki did to show us the Chicago skyline. And that was actually a photograph that gained quite a bit of traction within getting people's attention on a lot of the different flat earth proclamations and so forth. So the imagery that we look at really does affect how we see things. And that's part of why I believe it was time for me to go more public with my finding. From a young boy, I remember asking the question, you know, just within myself, when somebody looks at something, do they see it the way I see it? And the answer for sure is we've all got a different perspective. And so that's kind of my runoff into this, and say, you know, this is what I've started to see, and it doesn't add up. And it's not just the shape of the earth, it's a whole group of things, and a whole group of conspiracy realities. So for example, I believe it's relatively, there's a lot of evidence to prove that we didn't go to the moon. There's a lot of evidence to prove that we don't live on a ball. There's a lot of missing evidence to prove that 19 terrorists caused buildings to fall in New York and hit the Pentagon with planes that disappeared and bodies that are missing and black boxes that are gone. why does any of that matter? Well, it matters because the individuals responsible for those types of things, those conspiracies, haven't been brought accountable for them. They're still about doing their new world order is what they're doing. They can script humanity into a web of deception that humanity is largely unaware of. And then the conditioned response that brainwashed humanity has when somebody like me or many of those in our group and in our new friends that are realizing how deep the deception is, when we question the official narrative, the response is to call us crazy or stupid or unpatriotic or whack jobs or nutters. It depends on where you are, you know, but the idea is to basically call your judgment into question. And with that kind of as the, and then there's an elaborate system to actually drug those groups of people. Now, for some, the drug dealer may be on the street corner. He may have a cell phone and deliver a package indiscreet or discreetly, I should say. And then there's another form of drug dealer. And that drug dealer might be drinking a latte on his way to work, on his way to the hospital or his office in his European motor car. And he's known as a physician or as a doctor. And then that doctor's practice largely of recognizing certain symptoms that they would like to remediate. Okay, so the person has racing thoughts. They're a bit too happy, a bit manicky. They have conspiracy theories. They're interested in conspiracies. Well, a lot of these different types of perspectives, they want to drug out of the individual, and they want to have that person not question that. Now, the other group of another whole group of people, they just want to distract with sports and movies and fantasy and all of that. And then for the group of people that are unaware that they're being entertained with the fantasy of going to the moon, going to space and visiting Mars and all of that, they're unaware as well that all of this is a very elaborate mind control system. And that is what I mentioned on the Sun in the Clouds video. As far as the proximity of the sun to the clouds that it appears to be right in, I don't know exactly how that works. That's not the main point of the video. The main point of the video is enough people thought enough of it to put it on their Facebook profile. Over 1,500 people decided to step up to the plate and say, how do you explain that being 93 million miles away? So in one context, it's one thing to prove that the globe is a lie because of the physics properties of water, how we see the sun and the moon appear and vanish to our perspective, their duration of visibility in relationship to one another. We're coming up on a solar eclipse where the moon apparently is going to pass in front of the sun and obscure our view of it. Well, I hope to be able to take pictures of it. I'm not going to be so proud to say I am. One cloud going in front of that display is enough to impair the vision sufficiently. I won't even be able to capture it. And it's been unusually cloudy lately, interestingly enough. So that's why I made the proclamation on my live broadcast.
Robert.
Yeah.
About like the sun, like you brought it up quite often about that you could be where you are, and a few miles down the road, the person's got clouds and can't see the sun. Even with just cloudy clouds, the clouds go in front of the sun in someone else's perspective, and in yours, you might have a blue sky and you're a couple of miles apart. So you've always, like, that's your thing about how close the sun is, or what we see.
Well, yeah, and with the crepuscular rays, the angled rays of the sun, quite frankly, they don't even need to be a couple miles away. It can be as simple as those beams of light punch through clouds, and it can be sunny in one part of the beach and cloudy in another part, and they can be right next to one another. In other words, somebody's getting sun directly on them and a person right next to them isn't. I've seen that too. So the lighting is a big clue of what I believe we're living in. The shadows and reflections are a big deal. They show mathematical geometry. That's part of what the live broadcasts, the videos, and the still pictures show. You know, there will be a building, a condominium or a hotel that's worth many millions and millions of dollars, hundreds of millions in some case. And what'll happen is, because of the trajectory of the light coming down from the sun, some of the panes of glass will be lit up, and then it'll bounce off of that window onto the sand. So I can be standing on the sand, having the sun hitting me in the face and the sun hitting me on the back. It's a trip, you know, and it's all about perspective. It's where I put myself in that. So like I mentioned, I've been chasing the sun and the moon, taking pictures for better than a year now with a P900. Before that, I was recording sunrises and then merging an audio Bible with that. I wanted to show the beauty and majesty of creation and then play God's word at the same time for people to hear. It's not easy to read a Bible on the beach. And it's certainly not practical to do that driving a car. So when I take a live broadcast and I'm broadcasting the Bible live and driving a car or on the beach, those are all times that it's not really, in some cases, practical. In other cases, it's not even possible. Riding a motorcycle, I haven't been able to broadcast very effectively with that, too much vibration and so forth. But I couldn't possibly read the Bible as I'm doing that. And some people would say, well, you know, it's just a book. What's the big deal? Well, we're like a biological computer. We're all eternal beings, I believe. You're going to, for those of you who know of me, I'm a born again Christian. I'm not just a Christ follower. There's a lot of people that claim to follow Christ. Some of those people won't even be going to heaven unless they're born again. All God's children will be. Satan's children will not be. So with that in mind, the reason why I say all that is the perspective that I'm going to be bringing is a biblical one. It's a biblical perspective. So in the various truth movements, there's an exposing of what we believe to be a reality of a conspiracy that took place. Within the context of that, there are then different beliefs that we have of what actually took place. And sometimes those outrageous conspiracy theories, that's Smeagol, those outrageous conspiracy theories actually cause people to be very disillusioned with the whole thing. How do we know what really happened? So the enemy of our soul is very cunning and will actually fill the discussion with things that are ridiculous, much like the Flat Earth Society does to the Flat Earth discussion. You know, bringing outrageous theories of how this model, how the Flat Earth model works, and people say, well, that's crazy. Well, I'm just here to say the spinning globe is not possible on so many different from so many different venues, air travel being one. The fact that the physics and property of water doesn't support the spinning globe model. Centrifugal force causes water to fly off a tennis ball that I just tossed to a dog. It causes water to fly off of the rear wheel of my motorcycle just idling in a puddle next to the ocean. So, and that's going, you know, less than 7 miles an hour. How in the world would water form itself around a globe spinning over 1,000 miles an hour? That's absurd. It's not a reality. And so there was a point in time where I finally came out about that, believing that we had been lied to. When I was in school and we were told we came from monkeys, I believed it. We still got the monkeys.
We all did.
We still got monkeys. You know, they're not turning into people anymore. They never did. They never will. They never could. You know, that's an absurd proposition as well. So what I came to find out is that the official narrative of the mainstream media, the major networks, the major film studios, are all not trustworthy. They're promoting a godless cosmic Big Bang, a celestial sneeze, and therefore our existence is relatively pointless. So basically, grab all the gusto, do what you want, do what thou wilt is the whole of the law. That's Luciferianism, that's Satanism, according to Aleister Crowley. You know, and that to look into this and to realize that not only have we been lied to, many of us believe the lie. Now, in the looking into this, many people have discovered a lot of these conspiratorial realities. And another one that really confuses the issue is in the realm of religion. I put religion in one category and Christianity in a category all by itself. Being born again means the creator of the universe takes up residence in all of his children at some point in the human experience. Now that happened to me, that simply means that what you're looking at isn't natural. It's supernatural. I have a supernatural component that I didn't have before. Excuse me.
Is that one of your cats playing around there then, Robert?
Well, you know what they're doing is they're climbing on the map. So I'm just going to roll
flat
that
map.
up.
They're climbing on the flat map.
Well, and see, that was in this whole discussion, one of the things that'll happen is people will say, you flat earthers are crazy, your map's all wrong. Australia's the wrong size. Okay, let's use your map, and I'll just say, okay, it seems to work to get around the place. I don't need to show you what I believe it might be. How in the world how could I be a cartographer? How am I going to prove the exact shape of the continents? They're going to say, oh, you're a crazy guy, you were suicidal, you've been on drugs. Oh, well. So I'll just take pretty pictures and say, okay, here's the world that I see. Do you see it? And when I take the camera lens and I take this lens right here and I drop it right on the sand, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, the flat, wet sand or the water, and you can see the perfect symmetry of buildings. You can see the buildings tipped a little bit on the slanted sand, and then bam, when it gets to a large tidal pool, the symmetry is perfect. So when I'm going down the road and I see a puddle next to illuminated buildings that are worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and I take some pictures and I show you, okay, the lettering, the symmetry, it's all perfect. It's a plain mirror. The water is the big clue. I'm not living in a surfer's paradise. If I was in California, I could still find places, I'm sure. I would find it anywhere. I'll find it in a parking lot or the roadway. Wherever I am, I'll find the flat water. For gosh sakes, the toilet I flushed a few minutes ago, the water in there is flat. The water in here is flat. You know, undisturbed water is flat, and that's what it does. And it is so dense that with the property of buoyancy, you can take a steel ship and fill it with iron ore and sail it all around the Great Lakes and melt it down and turn it into more ships and machines. And we had the Iron Age, and in the United States was an area of heavy industry, and now it's been basically so much offshored. It's being done in China. China is now the chosen area to do that with. So the one percenters, so to speak, some of you are aware of who they are. I mean, as in the wealthiest individuals in the world basically controlled where the economic centers are, where the manufacturing centers are, and that type of thing. What happens in our country?
Robert, will you explain to people what you do? I mean, I know that some people in the chat room might even know anyway, and who's on our group and stuff like that. But will you explain to people what you do most days? To the beach.
Well,
apart from the Bible part, what do you do with the camera?
Yeah, I'll take pictures to engage the mind and the heart. So in one respect, they'll be rather intellectual, and it depends on who's looking at them. They might see the mathematical precision and the symmetry of a picture, as well as there are other pictures where a dad is walking with his son, holding his hand in one hand and a bucket of sand in the other. You know, I'll take pictures of people walking down the beach, a couple walking down the beach holding a cell phone, each holding a cell phone, and another couple coming the other direction that are holding hands. You know, the contrast is all around us. The different stages of life, the
and
excitement.
You like reflections, don't you? You like reflections.
Well, yeah, the reflections that we can see with our eyes, like the beauty of that. So, for example, we can see the beautiful reflection of the clouds on the beach. That's one thing. And then in that, sometimes there will be an individual, let's say in their 20s or 30s, all alone. Or then there might be a reflection of a man who I know lost his significant partner in life, a wife or a girlfriend. And now he's walking down that same beach that they were holding hands together, and now he's holding just the dog leash. You know, so there's scripture says, as water reflects a man's face, God's word reflects the man. So as we see these reflections, it's not just It's not just the reflection for the sake of visual stimulation. It's to engage the mind and the heart. I have people that mention to me some things that they've seen in a picture that I didn't see. So that's part of it too, is that now knowing what I know about the long distance shot of like Joshua Nowicki, I can look at the pictures of the Myrtle Beach skyline and say, oh my gosh, there's supposed to be about 400 feet of water obscuring my view of those 150-foot buildings. Okay, so when I first, and that would be like as far as
how
the light.
far do you reckon your camera zooms in, by the way, your P900? How many miles do you reckon it sees?
Well, you know, that depends on the moisture. Yeah, a little bit of moisture in the form of a cloud or fog interferes quite a bit. However, I can take shots of the sun and the moon and the stars. How far away are they? We don't really know. You know, some of the flat earth models will say, well, it's 3,100 miles away. I remember the numbers of all the different, or of many of the different
But how
models.
far does your camera see for then?
I'm sorry?
Do you reckon your camera sees for? Because I thought it was about 20 odd miles.
Oh, it's hard to say because I've got pictures of the moon. How far away is that? I don't know. It's not 238,000 miles. I can take a picture of a pelican. Pelicans may be 3 feet tall or so, and that pelican can be 5 miles away. And when I zoom in on it 83 times, it fills my entire viewfinder. And then when I look up at the moon and I zoom in 83 times, I would need about 7 viewfinders to fit the whole moon in that. So is there some kind of an optical dynamic I'm unaware of where distance of or objects of extreme distance have a different formula for their multiplication of size? I don't know. So that's part of the deal. Now, when I look at the skyline,
Robert, what do you think? If you have to zoom in 83 times, right, and you can't fit the whole moon in,
right?
Then,
well, what
does that say?
Like I mentioned, I would need about 7 viewfinders to fill that moon up when I zoom in all the way. That's kind of the idea, is that if I zoom in 83 times, I would need to snap about 7 pictures of the moon and put them together on a blackboard or on a, you know, like cut and paste them together, put them all together, and then I would have a full moon 83 times bigger, evidently. How does that work?
How many times do you have to do that? How many times do you have to sort of break it up? How many pictures would it make to make the moon at 83 zoom?
Well, I think about seven pictures or so.
That tells you something, though, doesn't it? Doesn't that tell you something?
Yeah, and then what is the moon actually? You know, some people I used to think that the bigger the moon, a full moon or a new moon, we would have a bigger tide. And I found out that we can have a high tide here we'll have tides between 4 and 7 feet normally. 7 feet would be very unusual. We're going to have a 1% moon on the day of the eclipse. That night we're supposed to have a 6-foot tide, 6 foot 1 inch. And I've seen full moons with a 4-foot tide. And you might think, well, 2 feet of water, no big deal. 2 feet of water is a big deal. It's a really big deal. When we had the hurricane here a little less than a year ago, about 10 months ago, the road that I parked my car on to go out to the beach was covered by about 3 or 4 feet of water because of the storm surge. And what basically happens is the wind blowing across the water for hundreds or thousands of miles causes it to stack up. You can take a coffee cup and blow on the top of it and blow coffee out the other side just with your mouth, just like that, just with the breath of your wind from your mouth. Okay, so with that in mind, when we get winds that are anywhere, from 0 to hundreds of miles an hour, 220 miles an hour or so, that causes a lot of water to be moving. And then that water moves into a much shallower area, and it's got to go somewhere, so it goes up. That's just what it does. So in the photographs that I've taken, in the tidal area, there will be an irregular shaped tidal pool. And in the bottom of that tidal pool will be flat water. And with enough of that flat water in thousands of little tidal pools, some of the tidal pools are really small, like the size of, well, it's a washboard surface. You can see it on my photo album, Perspectives of Creation, or no, now I call it Eternal Perspective.
One of the ones that's always going to amaze me is the dog one. When that dog runs up you put it upside down, the camera. The dog goes up and then something happens and the shadow flips as the dog comes around. It's not long enough to play. It's only about 20 seconds. So by the time we get that up, but it is on Robert's. I just still can't explain that.
Yeah, and that was a pretty interesting shot. The video itself is about 7 seconds long, and it'll just keep on playing. For a while, I had it as a profile video. And what's interesting about that is Jackson and Gordon would go walking out there. I've known Gordon for a few years now, and I just I wanted to get Jackson in the sunlight and chasing his ball. And so I believe I was the one that threw the ball. And the illusion there is it looks like Jackson comes out of his shadow, and it was upside down, and it's absolutely mesmerizing. I don't know quite how to explain it. So it was a real occurrence that I saw with my own eyes, and then I share that with other people, and it's unusual. And to make it a little bit more interesting, it was on a mirrored beach. That was just a beautiful day with clouds and beautiful colors, and the camera was upside down. Then I've got another video where a group of people are riding bicycles. There's a jogger and people looking around, and they're upside down. And it looks so silly, because when we think about it, if many of us are already convinced we're not on a globe. So part of the content that I produce is for people to be able to share with friends and family and say, do you really believe that a boat can float upside down in another part of the world? Does that even make sense? And what happens is people are so convinced because we've been brainwashed with the globe. We see the globe all around in the movies, Universal Studios, in all the company, in so many of the company logos, in that it becomes like it's been said in some of the videos, the unquestionable. Who's going to question that? Everybody is supposed to believe we live on a globe. And if you don't believe that, then you're stupid, or you're deceived, or you're crazy. And so one of the dynamics that happen with me, and I think it happens with a lot of us, is that when we finally come out and say, you know what, there's no proof for the globe that is reliable. It violates the physics and property of water, air travel, all the different things that we can look at and test with our own observations. The movement of the earth has never been proven, all of that. So the proof of the globe is a picture that was faked from space and a moon landing and all of that. You know, so I'm not embarrassed to point that lie out anymore. Now, where it gets a little, well, that's interesting enough. So what I've done for my own, I do what I believe God wants me to, and everybody else can deal with it however they choose to. Some are going to say, you know, you've got a cosmic sky guy, your imaginary friend Jesus. Okay, it's Santa Claus for adults. Okay, well, I believe that God's word is true and all others are suspect and should be compared to Scripture. When Scripture says that, when the Bible, God's word, says the world isn't moving, that means it's certainly not spinning, and all the hurling through space and wobbling and all that, none of that's happening. So
it was on Friday night, Robert. I just want to say sorry. Hello, Patricia. Patricia's joined us. Patricia from the UK. Hello, my darling. You saying hello, Patricia? Patricia.
Hiya. Everyone all right?
Hi, Patricia.
Yeah. Thanks for joining, Patricia. Yeah, Santos was trying to tell us how fast we'd be going. It's Mac series. Do you remember how fast he said we were going? Something or other.
I figured something in the 80, Mac 80 or something.
Yeah, Mac 80. And at Mac like 3 or 4, the skin, like those part, you know, when they've got in those chamber things, the skin's like going, your skin on your face can't handle it already. And we're supposed to be going Mac 80.
Yeah, it's absurd. You know, we
Isn't it? It's stupid.
well, and what I'm very careful with is, I try to find the balance in, I don't want to call people stupid for believing the lie. By irony and paradox, the deceived don't know they're deceived. And I believe pride is a catalyst that will cause people to think that they know better. And it's easy for them to look at the likes of me and say, well, Robert, you've really struggled in life, and I don't think you've got this. It's like, okay, well, when you find the curve, go ahead and private message me, because I'm not going to debate on that.
You can't, though, can you?
Well, and that's why I say, you know, I'm not a couple digits short of a full equation. This is not only intellectual. In fact, I believe it's more of a heart issue than anything else. I had to admit that I believed the lie, and once I did that, but you see, it wasn't about me. It was like God gave me His Holy Spirit and a love for the truth, regardless of where that truth leads. Am I going to lose the respect of friends and family and people I've never met? You know, people that I've only been connected with on Facebook.
All persecuted, aren't we, Robert? Everybody around us just thinks we're crazy, and yet they want us to believe we're going Mac 80.
Yeah, well, and that's part of the crucible of adversity that God is forging our character in. You know, when okay, so people through the centuries, especially I'm going to use the example of Christian martyrs. They would be burned at the stake, and all kinds of Jesus was crucified, and there have been all kinds of torturous methods to try and get people to say that the Bible, or that Jesus didn't really rise from the dead, that the Bible is not really God's word. The Catholic Church wanted people to say that the Pope was the head of the church, and many Christians were martyred because they said, no, Jesus is the head of the church, and they wouldn't recant that proclamation, so they were murdered. So mine is my proclamation is rather unpopular with a lot of people, and so people believe a lot of things. Is that belief based
The thing is, though, Robert, you've taken footage, even where you were when you went to your son's. You knew that the lake was 30 something, whatever it was, kilometers long. And it means if you do the 8 inches per mile and then square it, there should have been curvature, and yet really you could almost see to the other side.
Well, yeah, and that was, I knew that the time was going to happen that would be optimal to see that, and that was the fireworks display. I was able to see fireworks. I was in let's see, the end of the lake at Waverly Beach in Menasha, and shooting all the way down to Fond du Lac, where fireworks were being displayed there as well. Low fireworks, like a private display, and then the city's display, which was very low, a few hundred feet at the most. Well, there was in 8 inches per mile squared, 31-mile long lake. That's over 600 feet of missing curvature. Shouldn't be able to see from one end of the lake to the other. And I've got videos of beautiful glassy water there. I drove all the way around the lake. At the widest point, it's about 40 miles, or 12 miles wide, 31 miles long. One of the interesting facts of that lake is a river that leaves from Neenah, Wisconsin, home of the Kimberly-Clark Corporation, Neenah Foundry, and a few other, but those are the two main ones that people might recognize. That river flows north to Lake Michigan. Wikipedia says that it drops 140 feet into Lake Michigan. Well, in 40 miles, there's supposed to be over 1,000 feet of curvature. Water doesn't flow uphill. So I've got pictures of dams, water with floodgates open. And I've mentioned the floodgates of heaven. We had a great flood that put shark teeth in the land, in the deserts of the world, and all kinds of things like that. Well, the floodgates of heaven opened up and filled this world that we live in to over the tops of the mountains. Reportedly now we've got mountains over 5.5 miles tall with Mount Everest. I have no way of verifying that. However, well, I probably could if I had the resources to, but it would be a mathematical line of sight from sea level and the trajectory, the geometry to the top of a peak. What I did find out is that any synchronization with the elevations of the world a lot of times will require a connecting to the computer systems, the internet, and established elevations, whatever they may be. So a lot of times the commercial jet pilot will say we're leveling off at 37,000 feet. According to mathematics, 37,000 feet is higher than any mountain in the world. So when they go up to that height, they can fly over everything. if somebody is on the hit list and they're on a plane that they want to have crashed, all they need to do is mess with the navigation system. I've got a friend right now that I had breakfast with in Wisconsin by the dam over there, at the old Appleton paper mill, or the Vulcan mill, where the dam is located in Appleton. And he hasn't returned my calls, and his Facebook account is deactivated. And you might think, well, big deal. Well, he's actually he was one of the hot shots brought in for the Experimental Aircraft Association fly-in. Only the busiest airport in the world for that week. Okay, when I say hot shot, I don't mean to sound condescending at all. They brought in the best of the best to handle the busiest airport in the world without any problems. I mean, they did their job, they did it well. But he returned all of my calls before, so I'm concerned. Now, what he did was he went vocal with his proclamation that we're not on a globe. If the Bible.com guy says we're not on a globe, with my psychiatric history and drug addiction and all that, they might think, no big deal. Kyrie Irving says the Earth's flat. No big deal. He can play basketball and do what he wants. If one of the fake astronauts says we're not on a globe, they'll probably have a heart attack or something. They wouldn't want to make it look like a murder. They can use a directed energy weapon and interrupt somebody's heart movement. They can give somebody a heart attack from a distance. It's kind of interesting. I mean, I'm not freaked out about that kind of thing. We've got when I started looking into, well, I started looking into more. Some believe that we're in a simulation, like a D-wave computer, and the Mandela effect is changing space-time and realities. Well, I don't see it quite like that. The way I see it is people believe a lot of things, and a lot of people are deceived, and they're brainwashed by entertainment and news and all that contributes to a perception of this world that doesn't reflect the reality. And that's where the theoretical physicists like Einstein was built up as the most brilliant man in the world, many would think. He's no Einstein, or he's no rocket scientist. Like a rocket scientist has to be real smart? No. Einstein was more of a shill and an actor, as best I can tell. He came up with formulas that didn't reflect reality. And then if I say, well, that's how I see it, the conditioned response for people to have is, oh, I'm crazy for not believing Einstein was a genius. I'm crazy for believing Isaac Newton wasn't a wonderful Christian man that discovered gravity when an apple hit him in the head. Not buying it. I'm not buying that. I'm not buying the events of 9/11 as they're officially portrayed by the mainstream media. Why does that matter? Well, that was part of conscripting the world militaries on this war on terror, where everybody that doesn't agree with the New World Order is a terrorist, basically. And then they monitor all the track, trace, and database everybody. Am I much of a threat? Evidently not, because I'm still able to talk to you on a Google Hangout. There may come a day when I'm not able to. I've had death threats. I'm not afraid. And that's the old me would have really freaked out about some of this stuff, but not the new me. The D-Wave computer, I'm sure you know about it, right? Ceres and Karen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what is it capable? Well, from what I understand, it's basically the heart of the artificial intelligence that's not friendly towards humanity. And we've actually got some of the activity going on that would be like science fiction movies, but it's actually a reality. There's a commingling of that. So part of the, I've said, and I continue to say it, seeing is believing. What? What did we see? What do we believe? I saw the moon landing hoax. I saw that. I remember right where I was. Exactly where I was.
The more I see computers, the more I see how you can actually fake the whole visual part of it.
Would you say that again, Sirius?
The more I see how the world of computers works, the more I see how there is just simply trickery to fool you with visuals.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's part of it. Even the P900. This is computer generated imagery. There's no film. However, computer generated imagery doesn't necessarily mean computer fakery.
It's just digitalized, but the question is still the original data. And
exactly. That's one of the reasons why I'll take the camera and I'll spin it all the way around. I don't have a camera crew. There's no green screen there. There's no fourth wall. Right, I should say there is a fourth wall. There's no wall at all, actually. Look at what Mark Sargent said.
It seems that the 360 cameras actually, through the 3D visuals, you can actually see how your perspective is kind of a bubble within the rainbow circle in how you see the rainbow. The higher you come, you will actually see a circle rainbow.
Now, with the 3D or the 360, some of them talk about a fisheye lens. Do they all utilize that?
It's a complete 360 view, half of a bubble.
But is it a distortion? Will it give a curvature where one isn't really there?
Yeah, you have to look at it with the 3D focus, because then the image is transferred back into the 3D view you have, and you can actually look around. And the image itself is just static in that sense, but it will focus on on how you look at it, and you can actually see how everything around you is through that particular view, also a complete bubble, and how you perceive everything. The side
so how accurate to reality is it actually from what you're aware of? You know, in comparison to, like, if I were to take a walk out on a beautiful mirror surface.
You look at it in 3D, so I could actually look around instead of having the YouTube 3D view and then see it on 2D screen. Then on the 2D screen, you will see the how the side of your view is actually kind of twisted through your own lens as well. But because you're actually looking in the 3D sense, you see how your mind actually does that, works with that, when you look at out of your eyes normally. Mm-hmm. And because you look at a focal point in what is an actual sharp image. In the 3D view of YouTube, you see the middle of it is pretty sharp, but the sides of it get a little bit twisted. And that's how the eye actually perceives it as well. But because it's so far in front of you and in 2D, you see the twisting of that because you're not looking in a three-dimensional sense onto it.
So where would be some good resources to look at that particular type of cinematography, in your opinion, that represents reality as best you can tell?
Yeah, you will see that when you actually move your position, everything turns around as a wheel around you, as the sky, as you move over the map. The map itself is still square, and as soon as you move the map, the sky will move as well as a wheel around you.
That sounds pretty amazing. That's, do you know of anybody that's going to be doing the eclipse with that type of equipment?
Yes, we have a member that comes on. He's coming on to talk about the eclipse tomorrow, but his name's Stan Smith. He's got a 360-degree camera, and he says everybody should get one if they're going to do photography, because he just feels the P900 is really good for zooming in, but that's about it. 360-degree camera showed him that everything up there, not the clouds, but the sun, the moon, and the stars, it's all like a rainbow.
Now, do you know the approximate cost of the type of equipment that he's decided to use?
He speaks about, what is it, $30-$40?
How much?
$30-$40 for a cheap.
Oh, one was about £70, and the other a lot more. So, but you can pick them up quite cheap. That's £70.
£70. I don't know what a pound is.
It's a little bit like a euro, equivalent to a euro. I don't know what the exchange rate is now. So it's like $70 euros.
Yeah, no.
About probably $60. I don't know, about 60, 70, same thing, $60, $70.
Well, that sounds interesting. And is he going to be talking about that tomorrow then on the Hangout?
What he does is, he's called Stan Smith, but you put in Flat Earth Stan Smith. I can send you a link, and you can go and see some of the footage he's done with the 360-degree camera, and then you can message him if you want, Robert.
Oh, that'd be excellent. I would like to see that. That would be really good. Another thing that I've done too is that I really like a lot of the pictures that I've taken in videos, and yet I've found some really good content that people have documented some of the different conspiracies that are, I believe, actual. And it's very complicated in that one of my new friends had, there was like an hour, almost 2 hour long video about the war machines of the world, not just the equipment, but the politics behind war and all that. And what this, it was a very professionally done documentary. However, when they dealt with Cheney and Bush, they didn't deal with the fact that 9/11 was an inside job. They still passed all the responsibility on to 19 Muslim terrorists, supposedly. So that was the, that's part of the challenge of looking at the different conspiracies, is the deception quite often is very complex. And so they did a really good job of exposing a lot of the military industrial complex. And we know that a lot of that's true. And yet they missed one of the big pieces of that puzzle unintentionally, or I should say intentionally. They intentionally do that. So in the truth movements, one of the things that I've noticed is there are different spokespeople. Maybe they're viewed as a watchman on the wall, and they're supposed to help us to see what's really going on. And they'll have different pieces of the puzzle, but they won't touch some of the pieces of the puzzle, the bigger picture. They may talk about exposing 9/11 as an inside job, but they're not going to touch flat Earth. They're not going to touch the moon landing hoax. So that's one of the things that I believe makes this really complicated, and that's why what I did as a manner of housekeeping or conduct on Facebook, early on, I decided to not debate on my posts. I veered off of that a few times. I typically won't do it. what happened is all my posts would be public and anybody could comment on them. Well, with all the different trolls and shills that are intermingling in all of this social media, from YouTube and Facebook to Twitter and all that, I had to reduce the commenting to friends only. And the way that that works is a lot better. If somebody decides they're going to try and save the world from me showing pretty pictures and telling them, hey, we're not on a globe, and they're going to tell me how wrong I am because they're going to post a supposed apologetics ministry that says the flat earthers are crazy and they're bringing shame on the gospel of Jesus Christ because we're looking stupid, I would say, no, have you really looked into this? Like Kent Hovind is a good example. You know, he was great at exposing evolution as a lie, and he's really missed the reality that we're not on a globe, or that he believes we're on a globe yet. And that's absurd. It doesn't work. And some people are so arrogant to say, well, I believe much stronger in my God than you because my God can make water stick to a spinning ball and totally violate the physics and properties of water. Yeah. He doesn't need to do that because he said the world that he created isn't moving, not spinning, not hurling through space. So I'm not embarrassed to not only believe the truth, to share the truth about this. Is it going to be do people get upset with each other? Yeah, there was a guy, I don't know if it was a fabricated event. I mean, they create news events. Apparently there was a father and a son arguing, and the dad got upset. He was supposedly a globalist that threw a propane tank in the fire. Oh, well, did it really happen? I don't know. But it just goes to show how that story made it all around the world. People heard about it. And with our interconnectivity with the internet, we've got people from multiple continents right now communicating in real time. And that's one of the reasons why I've encouraged people to get used to going live for the event of the eclipse. What can you see? Not only just the eclipse, but the appearing of the sun and the moon. Where they appear and vanish, their duration of visibility can't be explained by a uniform rotation speed. Oh, the sun and the moon appear in vastly different areas. Well, that's because of the 24 or 23.4 degree wobble. We're not wobbling. We're not spinning. We're not hurling through space. We're fixed. We're covered by a firmament, I believe. I believe it's more than an expanse, more than clouds. Okay. So, you know, I've got pictures of what looks to be like a rainbow around the sun. Some view it maybe, and I've got a lot of them. I've posted a few of them on my profile, on my photo album. So, like, this may sound kind of funny, but as I'm laying in the bed here, and sunrise or moonrise is maybe, well, this morning it'll be at like 12:30 a.m. I'll have my camera in the garage where it's about the same ambient temperature as outside. If I take a really cool lens, like a 70-degree lens, and go out into 80-degree sweltering moisture, a lot of humidity, it'll just fog right up. I showed on my, and I'll take the shot. And what happens is in a given cycle from the moonrise to the moon set, that baby's moving. It's not only moving through my visibility, it's moving in a direction. You can see it. And so it would get kind of complicated to go ahead and document all the degrees of movement and all that. I don't do it. I know that I came into the Sun and Moon group thinking I was going to take the readings and show the readings. It was kind of complicated for me to do that. I just couldn't seem to get that going, and that's so I just stayed the route of showing the pictures.
Oh, but you
telling
have
the
your place,
story.
don't you, Robert? You come on the Hangouts and you regularly post, and then you're out there researching and taking pictures for everybody and recording what you see. And I know that maybe people think I'm stupid. Maybe they will, but that one where the sun is behind the tidal pool, like miles behind the tidal pool, yet you can see it in the tidal pool that's below the sea level. I don't get that.
Well, basically, what happens with that, there's the angle.
You know, don't you, Robert? That if you know this, don't you? If you've got a camera and you're at the beach, and then you take a picture of the sun coming to your feet, it's not coming to anybody else's feet. People, it's coming to their feet, and it's not coming to yours. So all that's going on.
Yeah.
Behind a tidal pool, being reflected in a tidal pool that's lower than the sea level.
Well, exactly. And that's all based on perspective. We all have a unique perspective. And that not only has to do with where our eyes are, it has to do with where our heart is and where our life experiences all kind of merge together in our brains. And part of that also has to do with, for me, clinging to my relationship with Jesus, like a drowning man would cling to a life jacket. You know, I came through this wanting to understand why they would make drugs that would cause people to want to kill themselves, and why they would allow drugs like that to be legal, and actually promote their use and allow advertising making promises that they don't really deliver on. So we've had school shootings in this country, and quite a few of the school shooters were on Prozac, the very medication that I was on when I tried to kill myself with a sleeping pill overdose. Very few people survive a Tylenol PM gel cap overdose, and I did. And
I'm sorry, Robert.
What's that?
I said, I'm sorry. Oh,
you know what? I'm actually glad that it happened, in that I appreciate you saying so, Karen. What I'm grateful for is I have an opportunity to speak to a situation that is epidemic in our world. Not only are there pharmaceuticals that are being dispensed through the corner pharmacy or the Walmarts of the world, or whatever, that way, they're also remaining in a lot of the water supplies. There's no remediation for that, no removal of that by and large. In fact, there's other chemicals added intentionally to make the population of the world less perceptive and able to perform critical thinking. In other words, if the globe is a lie, and it is, well, that means that we're not on a globe. It may sound silly, but if what my eyes are telling me, that undisturbed water is flat, that's what I observe in my water jug, or whether it's the small one or the toilet in the bathroom there, or the bathtub, or the swimming pool, or the big swimming pool that the continents rise out of, and people gather on the shorelines and go swimming and fishing and walking and all that. So basically, the perception of the world that we live in, it can be very disturbing. to some people. So much so that they want to anesthetize themselves with that, with different chemicals or activities that maybe make them feel good or distract them from the reality that they find disturbing. So some people will immerse themselves into video games, so much so that they're living in an alternate reality that they don't want to grow up. There are adult children living in their parents' homes, and they like to just play video games and watch TV and YouTube and not participate in what's important to do in life. They don't have passion, purpose, and perspective. They don't have a practical passion. They have one that's living in a false reality. So a lot of people want to do their own thing and then feel good about it. They don't want a deity. They don't want the Bible telling them what they should do and not do. So that's where a lot of people that I've heard, you know, when I posted in some groups, and I'll have the eternalperspectivebible.com on the post, and they'll start saying, "Oh, I look like a homosexual," or whatever, you know, and or that I've got my imaginary friend Jesus, you know. And some of them say that they became an atheist or a Satanist because they read the Bible. That's not what I desire for them to have happen. So, you know, I'm not going to say, oh, okay, I'm not going to tell people about Jesus anymore because somebody became an atheist. No, a lot of people became atheists and Satanists because they believed God was a fairy tale. You know, we were given the godless cosmic Big Bang in school and in entertainment and in the multimedia presentation that has enslaved this world and conscripted them to a false reality.
How many years have you believed it's flat now then, Robert?
It was February 16th of the 2015, basically.
In the chat room then, everybody, how long has everybody been a flat earther in the chat room? I just thought I'd ask them a question.
Well, I think it's a really good question. Now, some people come to believe and find out about the various conspiracies, this being probably one of the biggest ones. And then some of them come to a faith in God. And mine worked a little different. I thought I was born again like 33 years ago until I actually was on 2014, October 31st, Reformation Day, Halloween. I think that's kind of ironic. It was shortly after Robin Williams committed suicide.
Yeah, it's a bit spooky. Well, Halloween.
Oh yeah, yeah, and I believe it's God's sense of humor too. A lot of people are all excited about going to heaven, and they may go there, but they have to be born again to do that. And I'm not walking around telling people they need to stop doing stuff. I just encourage people to hear, share, and obey God's word. It's humanly impossible to do that biblically because the Holy Spirit needs to be resident in the child of God. Now, there can be people
there. Is it obey or love? You know, this whole thing about what we perceive as God. It's love, isn't it?
Well, love is one of the most prominent characteristics of God, I believe. And his children that are actually born again exemplify that. I'm very specific to say his children that are born again, because keep in mind, the names of all God's children were put in the Lamb's Book of Life before the foundation of the world, according to the Bible. Remember, I'll be giving you just what I believe to be a biblical perspective. With that in mind, when Jesus is talking to the scribes and Pharisees and in the Gospel of John account, he says to them, you can't hear me because you're of your father, the devil. Jesus had the awareness to know, because he is, in fact, God in the flesh. He knew what people were thinking. He knew the identity of those individuals, and they weren't his children. I could walk into a room of 100 children, and I could pick out our 3 sons without any problem. So the creator of the universe knows who his children are. Now, one of the most disturbing areas of scripture that helped wake me up was Matthew 7:21, where Jesus says on Judgment Day to those that say to him, Lord, Lord, didn't we drive out demons, work miracles, and prophesy? He said, away from me, you evildoers, I never knew you. He knew who they were. He didn't know them in the intimate way of salvation. I'm losing my power here. That's kind of weird. Hopefully I can keep on going. But what I wanted to ask you, we're kind of close to the 1 hour that we agreed on, right?
Yeah. Well, Chris hasn't joined us, but I was just telling the chat room that, you know, especially like series and that, and even you, Robert, when you're doing all your research, taking all your pictures, doing your sums or your diagrams or your whatever it is, blender, everybody stays up for hours and hours and hours and hours, and just Chris probably doesn't go to bed like 11 till 6, 7 in the morning. He's probably going to, like, series. Sometimes series is awake for 48 hours. And I think it's probably catching up on him a little bit, to be honest, because he's not for the group. Chris has a little bit tired. I mean, we were up really late last night. Then maybe he stayed up doing, you know, and then you think, oh, I can get on with something on the computer now. Oh, look, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon or whatever it is, and you haven't slept. So I don't know where he is, but we can talk a bit more, because obviously I think everybody's enjoying it. There's quite a few viewers, and they're still here.
Well, glad to hear that. Well, you know, in this pursuit of the truth, I wanted to know why it's more than greed that motivates the marketers of products. Okay, so for example, somebody might think, well, they put fluoride in the water to help make our teeth whiter and not get cavities. Well, no, it doesn't do that. That's not what it does. It's highly toxic, and even brushing your teeth with it is toxic to your body. It has a disclaimer that says you shouldn't swallow a serving size, the size of a pea. Well, the mouth absorbs chemicals. Fluoride is toxic. Sodium fluoride is very toxic. That's what it is. So I'll use baking soda to scrub my teeth. I use it for a deodorant with the coconut oil on my skin, and I put the coconut oil all over me. It helps keep my skin elastic, and it's hydrophobic. It repels the water. Salt water is very harsh on the skin. So if I didn't take care of my body by putting the coconut oil, my feet would be cracking. It would be very painful. So what I want, and it's actually a brain food. It's actually very healthy for the brain. It's a healthy fat. The brain needs fat. So the low fat, no fat, fat-free diets, bad for you. A lot of people don't know that. People think that sometimes sugar is well, that aspartame is okay to have in a sugar substitute. It's terrible. It's
but as you're talking about stuff like that, tell them what happened when you did what was it? Is it microwaved water?
Well, it's interesting. There was a video that I saw where they took a couple of plants and they watered one with water that had been microwaved, and then it cooled. They let it cool off, and another plant that was not microwaved. Well, the plant that was watered with microwaved water died. Okay. And then I shared that with a friend. He said, well, he debunked that. He debunked it within a few minutes. And I said, well, the insincere investigation is going to find what the investigator wants to find. My brother-in-law did tests on microwaves to see if they leaked, because that was supposedly unhealthy. So why would I want to microwave my water? I'll use a stovetop. I don't use a microwave anymore. I don't want to be around it. What's interesting too is water towers aren't only water towers anymore in a lot of areas around by us. Most of the water towers have a lot of electronics on them. The microwave broadcasting for cellular. So even if somebody says, oh, I think cell phone frequencies are bad for me, I'm not going to have a cell phone. Hey, you're getting hit with the frequencies whether you like it or not.
So,
And I do believe it changes the molecular structure. That's what it does. It alters the structure of the water. So I put my water in the sun after it's highly purified. I like it. It assimilates into the body better when it's body temperature or close to it. So if you've ever heard of somebody say, well, I had a gut feeling, part of that's because the gut is actually where the brain chemicals, the neurotransmitters, serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, all of that comes from. So that's where it's generated. So garbage in, garbage out is an old computer lingo. If somebody puts garbage in the body that's toxic to the brain's perception, it's not going to have a healthy result for being able to evaluate information and perform critical thinking tasks. That's part of it.
Indeed.
Just Artist has joined us.
Hey, everybody.
Hey there.
Hello, Robert.
Hey, Robert.
Have you met Artist before, Robert?
I think so, yes.
Yeah,
Artist likes the pyramids, don't you, Artist?
I like the pyramids very much, and also I like eating healthy.
Yeah.
I've been a vegetarian for 43 years.
Wow.
Yep. So back in the 80s, I was already a vegetarian because my parents already were vegetarian, because my dad worked in the pharmacy industry, and he saw some things that he that it made him vegetarian, because they put so much antibiotica in the food that they in the hospitals they have to get stronger and stronger antibioticas to treat people, and most of the time those strong antibiotica will also attack the good cells in your body. So you have it breaks off magnesium, vitamin C. So sometimes after a time of period you use antibiotica, your body has almost, if you're a little bit older, it almost takes a year before your body is up to par with your magnesium, vitamin D and C.
Now, do you also liquefy your veg? By the way, I really appreciate what you just shared. That makes a lot of sense. That was what I found too, was the harm there. Now, to aid in the assimilation of the nutrients, do you liquefy your vegetables sometimes too?
Sorry, I didn't catch the last part.
Jane,
do you liquefy your vegetables as well?
I have a small. I liquefy my vegetables. I just squeeze them on a and get the fruit sap out. But most of the time, I just eat the whole fruit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like for example, I had to learn that I was doing better to bring the vegetables home and freeze them instead of just letting them sit in the refrigerator. And then I would liquefy them and put them back in the freezer.
Yep.
And I've got like a nutritional smoothie that's fruits, vegetables, hemp hearts, chia seed, cayenne pepper, Himalayan salt, honey, and healthy juices as well as applesauce and bananas and mixed berries, all that. And
Oh yeah, you can put anything in there as long as it's fruits and vegetables.
yeah, and it's extremely powerful. What I found out too is that right before I drink it, I'll have like my morning smoothie. I'll add like a quarter of a cup of fresh ground coffee, and then I drink it right away after I just pulse it, so it mixes it up, but it doesn't add the coffee flavor to it, and then it just slides on down. It takes me less than a minute to consume what would take me about 45 minutes to put together and chew up if I was just chewing it. But like the blender I use spins it, chops it up at about 3,500 RPM. You know, I could never chew it as fine as it blends in the blender.
Yeah, those blenders are very handy to use.
Oh
indeed.
yeah.
Yeah, you can make all kinds of smoothies, and you can also experiment with putting different fruits and vegetables together. And also, I'm beginning to grow a food garden at the back of my home. So I have an apple tree. I have other kinds of fruit.
We've got to go back to growing a bit of our own, haven't we?
Yeah, I've also all kinds of vegetables in my garden, potatoes, and you can grow them.
You have, Lena. You have, artists. You have.
I have potatoes.
You have gone back
I
to
have
growing your own.
Raspberries, if they called, and those other fruits. Those bushes, fruit bushes, and some red berries, and yeah, you can eat them. Also, I have rose hip. It's also very healthy. A lot of vitamin D and C. Rose hip maybe contains the most vitamin D and C in them. But you have to get the wild rose hip, not the made one they made in that are artificial, sorts of, because those are sometimes poisonous. So you have to get the wild rose hips.
Robert, do you grow any of your own?
Actually, not now. Now, what I was doing for a while when I could get the seeds was growing sprouts, bean sprouts, alfalfa sprouts, and mixed sprouts. That was one thing that I would do. What we have here is some really bad soil, and I know that we could probably amend it and grow better. It's pretty hard to beat the produce that we're able to buy locally here. It's really good. So it's a huge time investment that I'm spending taking pictures rather than the gardening.
Well, some local farmers also sell great vegetables and everything that aren't treated with chemicals.
Right.
So sometimes you your fresh fruits and vegetables locally without any pesticides on them. You just have to. I'm lucky enough to have an ecological farm about 2 miles from my home. So.
And whereabouts do you live?
I live in Germany, and I live near the border of the Netherlands. And I live, if you have the Netherlands and you take the half part of the Netherlands, and you go a little bit over the border, that's where I'm living.
Okay.
So it's an area that is not very dense with people.
But you almost have a Dutch accent, don't you? Because you lived in, is it Holland? You lived in Holland for quite a while, haven't you?
Yeah, I lived in Holland for about 25 years, give or take a year.
It sounds like series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my German is also with a lot of Dutch accent still in it, because it's your first language that I've learned, and so you always.
Hey, artist, speak a little bit of German.
Hallo meine Freunde. Het is schön dat zich hier aan deze Sunday Moons show weer binnen.
And what about Dutch?
Ja. Dutch? Oh, het is weer heel erg leuk om hier op de Sun and Moons groep te zijn. En het is altijd gezellig met series en Karen en Richard.
Oh, very different languages, aren't they?
Yeah.
Now, when you were in Holland, my understanding is that some of the areas are low-lying and they would use windmills to pump water out. Is that actual? Does that really happen?
Yeah, we had a lot of lakes in the Holland, and because of the shortage of space to live, because the Netherlands was getting crowded and more crowded, they pumped out a lot of lakes to make small villages and small cities on that side. So it was necessary because we had
sea level.
Yeah. Most of the parts of the Netherlands are below sea level. Yeah.
Now, like how much below sea level are we talking, would you think?
About, I think, 10 meters.
Really?
Yeah, and it is very. I think the lowest part is, I think, almost 10 meters below sea level, and the highest part in Holland is the highest point in the Netherlands is 25 above sea level.
Wow.
Well, you can even feel it if you are bicycle. I did a lot of bicycle rides when I was younger, and sometimes 200 kilometers, or even a little bit more than 200 kilometers. And when I was bicycling, you can feel that you are riding uphill if you went from the coast to the east side of Holland.
I just would like to say that Chris has joined us. Good evening, Chris, or good afternoon, Chris.
Yeah, it just went to the evening side. Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, Chris.
People in the chat room were saying, "Where's Chris?"
Yeah, they were missing you.
Yeah, welcome aboard. I just wanted to say I'm gonna go ahead and just turn my mic off and listen on in. So before I do that, were there any questions anybody wanted to ask me before I just listen in?
Well, talking last night about him showing some photographs, which I think you did. Well, I think even artists, everybody would be very interested about. So that's what hopefully Chris is going to show in a minute. But I just want to tell a little story. When I went to stay in Denmark with my friend who lives right at the top of Denmark, all the ferries come over from Norway, and what they do is, because they're not allowed to drink in public, They come over looking like, I don't know if anybody remembers this in the chat room. It's a knockout. If anybody remembers that. So they've all got bells and balloons and they're all going, ooh, making noise. And they come on their cycles. They cycle for miles. Then they pitch up in their tents. Then they go drinking. And then they pick it all up and then they cycle for miles, pitch their tents, go drinking. And they do that all weekend. And then they go back to the ferry and go home. Hundreds of them. Hundreds and hundreds come over on their bikes to do that. Wow. I saw it. They're like teams. They're like teams. Like 20 go past, and a couple of seconds later, another 20 will go past. All different colours. They're red ones, yellow ones, green ones, what green clothes on. It's just amazing.
Well, nowadays you see more and more people on those electric bikes in Europe.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I'm cycling a distance, I only see people on those electric bikes, even people who are in their teens.
Yeah, every time they bike around me, I call them cheater.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, Chris, are you going to show us those pictures that we were talking about?
Yeah, I can show you a few of those here and see what I wanted to get some thoughts on that.
So Robert and Judith and everybody else.
I know Robert's really into the photography, right? So big time. So it's,
yeah, and Judith is as well.
Yep, you did too. Yep. I was curious about. I'm going to share a screen here in a second here. Once I find the right picture I'm looking for.
I've presented you now, so just wait for it to come up.
Where is it?
It's going to be a bit of dun dun dun.
Yeah, let me share the screen here. Application
There'll
this
be a
one.
few sighs in the chat room when Chris shows us what he's going to show. There's going to be a few. Ooh.
Well, I don't know if I wouldn't go too far with that.
Oh, you're not doing the sun ones then, or is that coming up?
I'll get to those too. Yeah.
Aha. Okay then. Carry on then, please, Chris.
All right. So I was just researching the stars and the eclipses and all kinds of stuff, and I started to notice that in all the night shots done by high-end photography with the really good detail, you'll notice that across the water, when you compare the water to the sky, the stars are different, and they shouldn't be, right? In my opinion, there's got to be a reason why the stars in most of the photos, if you look at most of them, like you see a daytime shot of the stars or a daytime shot of a still lake, right? And you'll get, and even in the night ones, you get a nice perfect image of the mountain, and the trees are perfect. It's all perfect, right? There's even the clouds that are below the stars or clouds are in the water, right? And the rocks are doubled. But then you have to ask yourself, well, where's the rest of it? Where's all the Milky Way?
Oh,
Sorry about that.
Robert, we've got a bit of feedback. You have to click off the other one.
Yeah.
Well,
Who
also,
got
I know that.
yeah, Chris, also it looks like that the stars in the water are a little bit longer. A little bit.
Well, you get a little bit of angulation, a little bit of angle there, but there's one photo I was trying to find that was really a really good example.
You need 3 of this. So you can actually line up the two in all directions.
Of course, now that I have it open, I can't find the picture that I really wanted to talk about because it was just right in your face. But
oh yeah.
Yeah, you will find it eventually.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah. Kind of always save the things you did.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
I have a backup. I think I have almost about ancient structures, almost 1 terabyte of pictures.
A terabyte of pictures, yeah.
Yeah.
And
That's the whole thing.
that are only the ancient structures. So
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
Is there
Yeah,
a
so that, obviously,
is there a 360 camera with that kind of optical capture that you're aware of?
360. There's some there that are. No, that's not 360. That's just a 180 type of time. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about the 360 one.
Yeah, see, because some of the images I'm looking at, I can't, I certainly can't capture any video with that kind of resolution and low light. And my photos, well, first off, I haven't seen some of the stars like that. That is absolutely gorgeous. Have you, is that in a photo album that you could share to the group or send to me, or have you already shared it?
I'm just, these ones are just Googled off of, just did a share and doing image for like Milky Way and the Salt Lakes. These are salt lakes, right? Because they had the best images.
Yeah. I don't want to sound insulting. I just am. I haven't seen much of this type of photography before that I would recognize as actual or reliable. I'm used to seeing this kind of thing maybe from NASA or in science fiction. They're all these are spectacular. Is there?
Chris, see Proxy says in the chat room, just search for 360 Milky Way on YouTube. 360.
Say again.
360 Milky.
Put 360 Milky Way on YouTube.
Yep.
Z Proxy's got some. Yeah.
Well, I think it's just, he says Sun and Moon Group. Just search for 360 Milky Way on YouTube. 360 cams are top notch. Wise up already.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of these obviously have their this is Royce Bear. Looks like he's a professional photographer near the Salt Lakes. He's got it stamped. It's nightspacephotos.com, a website. So I mean, some of these obviously could be stacked images where they take several shots and then stack them to enhance them a little bit.
Yeah.
And or a bit of a time lapse, like a long exposure type photograph. But even in this one here, you can see that the mountains are perfect, trees are perfect, everything else is perfect. You can just barely see the Milky Way, and the rest of the stars you don't see in the water, right? I know the water can be a little bit absorbing of some light, but to me it just seems that there's just too much of it being absorbed. And I noticed too that the Milky Way, you can actually, I've seen a video where a person took the Milky Way and they ran a line down through the center of it here and then took Photoshop, flipped it onto itself, and it's a mirror image of itself when you invert it. So to me it seems that I was trying to find the one that had Orion in it, because there was one that had a really nice shot of Orion I was talking to a friend about. But I'll just explain to you what I saw in that picture, and I'll try and find it and talk about it again. But when we looked at Orion in the sky, you had the 3 dots of Orion's belt, and then the dagger part had the 4 with looked like a little bit of a cross on, so it looked like a sword, Orion's sword. But in the water, there's only 2 stars and the sword. And I think his ankles were missing in the water, right? So some of the stars that were in Orion were visible in the sky, but are not visible in the water. So it just kind of led us to believe that it was a double image. The same stars were actually being reflected backwards and upwards and reflecting off of something else above it. So you're seeing more than one image of the same light source.
Chris, I may have a picture that you were searching for.
Okay, let me see what you got there.
Let's see. I have to attach it from my. Come on.
I'll bring up, while you're doing that, I'll bring up those sun ones too. Well, let's go and talk to other photographers too, and they said, well, yeah, you're right. It kind of does look like there's multiple images of the same light source, but only some of the light's headed in this direction. And so just the light that's coming towards us, to our perspective, is being reflected in the water, and the other lights, we're looking out through through a boundary layer that's, you know, some sort of a dome shape, and we're looking out through it.
This
So-
one, Chris?
Let me see, pop it up there.
What I noticed on some of the star shots that I've taken, or the sun and the moon, if they're too high in the sky, based on my perspective, I can't. My camera doesn't take a big enough picture when it's the standard horizontal position to get the reflection and the object in there. Like the star that's the brightest, one of the brightest stars that is typically close to the sun at the sun appearing. That one in particular, I have to typically turn my camera vertical to get both of them in the shot. So, and I noticed another thing too, on some of the photography, I've seen the moon come up over the ocean, and I've got pictures of it. However, the proportion of the moon is so much bigger than it should be in relationship to the ocean. So, you know, it seems like some of the photography is enhanced or altered, like you mentioned, like a multi-layered, like multiple pictures kind of blended together, maybe.
Well, as you're there, Robert, considering that Chris is going to be talking about these stars not being seen and stuff like that, maybe you could take a few pictures and see if you can does the same thing for you then.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I'll go through my photo album and see what I've got with stars. See, the challenge with the Coolpix P900, it's not quite as impressive of a night camera, at least not in my own level of skill in operating it. Maybe there's some settings that I could do to enhance that. But like the picture we're looking at that Chris put up there right now, I could get the light in the center, but all those stars up there, yeah, there's missing stars, big time. And see,
Is that all right then, Chris? If Robert tries to take a few photographs like that for you.
well,
Chris?
here's what I can see with this picture right here is that there's a lot of missing stars based on this, on my perspective to that horizon. I should see more of the stars down in the water than are there.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was. This is the actual photo I was looking for, because it was one of the best examples. I think some of it is like you're saying. Like, I mean, obviously, if the angle of the reflection hits the water and comes back to the camera lens, well, if the angle's too great, then the camera really can't see it. But I don't think is the case exactly, right? It's this one here. I mean, this is, you can see Orion down in the bottom left corner. Right?
Yeah.
The three dots on the belt, and there's only, if you zoom in really close, you might see that there's two primary dots and a little smaller dot for the where the blade would be. And in the sky is that you get the three nice and bright, and then there's 1, 2, 3, 4 on the knife part, right? And they just don't match up.
So, Chris, what are you thinking is going on here with this then? What would your explanation be from what you can tell?
I like about
Without really getting into doing the photos myself and actually, doing the experiments, that's what I'm trying to call on you guys that are have all the gear to do that. My first guess would be that the stars in the sky, some of them, not all of them, but some of them, are multiple images of themselves being reflected backwards into a medium and reappearing, like as if you're looking into an infinity mirror, right? The ones in the water are all the stars that I would classify as the really emitting stars that are shining light in our direction. Everything else isn't shining light in this direction, at least not in enough intensity to either come through whatever that is or reach the water, right? Our camera lens. Right. This has to be
But
some
you
sort of
was going to say something, Chris. Maybe it might help. What were you going to say?
There is a difference between if we are standing there and we're watching in real, and what we do now, we watch the picture. I want to see this in reality, standing outside and
Yep.
see. Yeah, it's different, I think.
Yeah, I'm going to do the same. I'm going to try and find a lake around here somewhere on a nice, cool night and try to go take a drive if we can sometime. Not sure when, but sometime.
Well,
Go see it.
Maybe Judith and Robert, if they're out, maybe could see if they could do a couple of, well, as best as they can, see how many stars come out on a few pictures. Judith and Robert?
I can try, yes.
I'll see what I can do. You know, one of the things that I joked about, where I did find the globe or the sphere or the curve would be the little atomized water droplets. They're each a reflective orb, and it's really fine and they're really small. And so like fog or droplets of water that are in clouds actually would be reflected in that water down below. Even though they don't generate light themselves, they reflect the light. So the amount of light that's near the horizon there, I would expect to see more light in the water below. Even though it may not appear like a real defined star, I would expect to see that more like a cloudy, not because it's not just that the stars aren't there, it's the blackness of the bottom. I would expect to see a little bit more illumination there with what's above. Does that see like in the area that's close to the middle of the picture? I would expect to the far right there's like clouds there. Yeah. And we're not in how black it is with the random stars.
I'll tell you how you can do it. Robert, put up the picture that's on your computer about the reflections of the clouds. When we came in, you were showing us a picture, because that's what you mean. Show that to Chris, that's missing from that photograph.
Well, I'm going to have to let me see. I'll see what I can do here. My camera is it's dying. That's the thing. I don't have enough power in it to be able to do that. It's my cover photo, is what it is. If maybe you can pull it up, Karen.
Go and look for it. Chris, you carry on talking and I'll pull up his picture, because it's just to show you what he's saying is there's clarity missing from that photograph. That's what he's saying.
Yeah, the blackness of the bottom I wouldn't expect to see with the amount of illumination that was above. That's basically it.
You can see it's a layover because you can see a few planes flying the lines. It's within the photo itself, you can see. So it's actually an overlay in time, of a short time, probably.
Yeah, that one there is, it's about a 45-second long exposure, because there's a couple of plane trails that you can see in the flashing light, like dots over time. So it's definitely a long exposure, but I mean, I agree with what Robert's saying too. there certainly are stars missing in the water, especially in that image. But when I looked at that image, it's the first one that kind of got my attention, and I looked at it, I was like, okay, well, what other examples of this can I see? And I looked, a couple hundred pictures of, different search cues too, like Salt Lake night shots, Salt Lake reflections. So that's why I was going to ask the photographers what they think, because
I was thinking
it doesn't
about
make sense. Yeah.
I was thinking about all this camera. Maybe there is a trick. We can't see what we can see. I mean, maybe there is a trick with all this camera. I don't know. This is what I'm thinking. Maybe there is many things we can see if the camera was in another system, not like this. Because if everything is controlled, maybe all this camera to this system, maybe it's a trick. I don't know. That's what I think.
Yeah, I don't know if it's maybe something's going on there for sure. Yeah, I don't know if if they have the ability to program every camera to do the same trick and et cetera, but it's and I know there's a lot of people that play with their photos with Photoshop, and that's the problem. It's so hard on the internet now to figure out, well, who's messing with the image and who's not messing with the image, which ones are real. NASA's faking all their photos, and so is everybody else faking all their photos too, right?
Yeah, and that's kind of where I was initially saying about, is it real? So if an exposure is taken for 45 seconds, that's not actually, is it reality? Or is it just kind of fakery of sorts, or computer generated imagery of sorts? That's kind of like, I can't walk out to to that area where that picture was taken and see that with my eyes. I can't see that, right?
Oh, exactly.
So yeah, and so in that context, I'm more of I want to show people what I believe to be the real world. And when we have an exposure that's, that long, that's really not reality. I mean, you can see some pretty things. Computers can make pretty things. They do it. NASA does it all the time.
There's the picture on screen.
Yeah.
So
even the sun rays are reflected here.
it's not the stars, Chris. It's just that Robert came on with that, and he's into reflections.
Yeah.
And then that picture shows more definition than. I know there's a bit of sunlight in that one, but he would expect to see the clouds looking like that on the water, and they weren't looking like that on the water.
Yeah.
And you see, like this particular image, I just went out there, took the picture, no trickery at all, and that's just what it is. That's how it looked. I've got I've got hundreds of pictures on that day, and actually tens of thousands, because I've got hours of video on that day. Each one of the through iTunes, I can actually extract one of the frames of the video. I just haven't done that much with that.
Yeah, it's a great shot, right? And that's a great example of how reflective water really should be, right?
Yeah, and what's so interesting about that, the conditions have to be just right, because this particular area where we're looking at is where the ocean fills up the coastal preserve. So not only was it calm, it was there wasn't much water movement, based on perspective and the location of the sun, it's in the cooler season. Well, it's even though I posted it on March 27th, that's actually November 24th when it was taken. And see, that's part of the dynamic of where the sun and the moon appear and vanish on the horizon. This time of the year, the sun would appear more over closer to the island. Now, granted, I'm not on the shore right next to. I'm a bit in on the point. If I were to walk up and to the right, the sun would still be coming up quite a bit further right than it is now. But that's all got to do with the course that the sun moves above the face of the earth, and it's based on perspective where it looks like from there.
Exactly. And that's a perfect segue to what I wanted to talk to you before you go here. Also,
Okay, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, it's related to the sun.
Okay, so you're going to present now, are you, Chris?
Yep. Yep. I can get some thoughts on this problem too. Problem or a perspective, or just the way it is. It's not necessarily a problem, but it's a study in optics and the sun. Yeah. So these are photos, and these ones aren't photoshopped. They're single shots, and they're not time lapse. They're just single shots with the filter on them. From a couple of friends of mine. Different filters, but they're both just regular, standard camera shots of the sun. Now Bradley, he got in his shot, you can see he caught the sunspot roughly at 3 o'clock. It's almost perfectly at 3 o'clock, right there where my little hand is. If you can see my little pointer.
Yeah.
And then 3.5 hours later, he went back and took another shot. Didn't move the camera, just clicked it again 3.5 hours later. And now the sunspot has moved down to about roughly the 4 o'clock position, roughly 4:20, somewhere in there. So that's where I've circled those two locations of the sunspot. I was trying to do some measurements on a grid to see where things were lining up. Now he is in Montana, so he's above the equator in Montana in the United States. Now I have another friend that's a great photographer also, and also does a lot of pictures, and he's from Sao Paulo, Brazil. So he's south of the border. And his pictures, his name is Anderson Navies, if you want to go check out some of his pictures too. His photos are the opposite. His sunspots start on the left and tend to go down to the right down towards 6 o'clock. So over time, these ones are over time. So this one is 9:24, and then 12:16, right, 14:22. And you can see that the spot just travels from the top of the clock down to the bottom of the clock. So the sun's acting like a giant, a really big clock in the sky, right? But it's interesting that it has the same properties that we see in the moon. When you cross the equator, it flips, right?
Yeah.
But it seems to actually...
Also, what the big difference was in the photos you showed before, the sun was far more elliptic.
There is particularly the equator itself, or the actual position between the.
Oh, is it just because of the internet? It's a. Can you go back to those photos where you can see those two beside each other?
Oh, that's probably because I had them slightly tilted. I probably did that. Yeah.
Yeah, because
yeah,
it almost look like they are elliptic from. Oh, that's the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is his original photo, and in this one here, I put them into some software, and I was trying to get some measurements, so I probably just rotated it backwards.
It's just a little bit more oval shape.
Yeah. Yeah, the thing I'm looking at though is north of the equator in the United States, the sunspot goes in this direction from the top on the right hand side of the clock down to 6 o'clock, and then south of the equator, it goes the other way. And I know that Robert's into taking pictures, and Dave Marsh is, expert on the moon and timeanddate.com, and we've looked at that moon flip phenomenon too, where you can have two people take a picture of the moon at the same time, one in the north and one in the south, and the image will actually flip, but they see the same face, right? With the same craters, the same face. So you would think that if you were traveling, say, from Atlantic Canada, took a picture in Atlantic Canada, and someone in South America took a picture at the same time of the same moon in the same time zone, you would think that if it was an orbital, like an orb object, then from those two different perspectives, you would get a slightly different image, right? You shouldn't see the same craters because it's like you're walking under a big basketball, right? That type of idea. Right? There should be, because it's so, in theory, it's so far out there, you wouldn't get a whole lot of parallax in the image, maybe a half a degree or a degree or two, because it's a very distant object.
Is the picture supposed to look like that? It's a bit pixelated.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's a high zoom picture with the filter on it, so it's.
Just checking. Okay, thank you.
And I think when I share screen, because I'm sharing from Facebook here versus pixelation,
because downgrades your image definitely.
Yeah, it's just to show how that image is traveling. But what I noticed, what's the best way to explain that is, it seems to be. Now you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not sure if the moon flip is more of a vertical flip, and the sun here appears to be doing a horizontal flip. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Right. If you take a picture of the moon in the north and one in Canada, one in Australia, the two photographers will get an image that's actually vertically flipped. It'll be a reverse image of the same image, but one's facing up and one's facing down. Right, so it's an upside down. But in this case, the sun is going, is flipping in the opposite axis. It's flipping on. So that would be. So let's say that's the moon is a flip on the x-axis, and this is a flip. This is a flip, and the sun is a flip on the z-axis. Yeah. And that just kind of makes me say again. Right. I mean that just went so far over my head that I'm like, what is going on? Right.
Well, on a little bit different yet related subject, Roberto Gigliardi, a while back, when I took a picture of the moon at about 4 a.m., his comment was a picture of the moon that he took in Australia minutes later of the same moon, which would be impossible to see on the globe model. So it's a different form of forensic evaluation.
Yeah.
Ours was to simply prove the globe was a lie. Where you're getting into on this particular pursuit, from what I can see, is to determine exactly what's going on, which is, there's a bit of mystery involved with this. Is it the exact same sunspot? With the moon, we can see a more defined image and confirm. And yet, is it possible that people are seeing? I should say it's hard to recognize on the sun here. To confirm that spot is exactly the same spot, to me anyway. Are you convinced that that's the same sunspot?
Yeah, with multiple sunspots, you can actually check it for.
Yeah, as far as I know, there's one sunspot that's almost permanent all the time, and it's this particular one from what I've looked at, and I'm still looking at the details on it. But there seems to be one sunspot that's always there all the time, always observable, and always facing us, which again makes no sense on the heliocentric model. the moon or the sun's face should not face us 365 days a year. But apparently, the sunspot's always there, right? So
that's a excellent observation. See, like I mentioned before you came on, Chris, my endeavor here is not to prove exactly how it all works, simply to show pretty pictures of how the globe is impossible and people need to be born again. That's pretty much where I go with this. As far as trying to prove the exact shape of everything and how the model works, I lost interest in having people say, your model's wrong, your map's wrong, the distance of the sun is wrong, all that. And I'm saying, you know, from where I'm coming from, I'm not making a specific claim of how it all works, just that the globe is a lie and the Bible is true. That's what I do.
Man is the liar.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you give him the things that you are certain about.
With Jesus, I would also add, see it as through his words, the manual for the freedom of your godhood. And it's all about the freedom, and it's the freedom what controls is all hating about, because it's actually freeing the slaves. We are the mind slave. That's all.
Yep.
And the actual word of what Jesus said is the manual to the freedom of your godhood. That is that reborn part of actually being that God, because we are even greater than him, as his words say.
Well, even at school, we they don't teach us to think for ourselves. If you just learn the book and
the thinking for yourself, indeed, yeah.
At school, you learn all the things from a book, and if you write them down exactly as they are in the book, you get a great mark. And if you start free thinking and have another perspective, you get bad marks. So the whole school system is also not working.
Fighting for freedom.
Yeah.
It's
freedom is not freedom. Freedom is not taught at school.
Sorry.
Just like I think religion should be more like a history lesson on school. So you have a part of school that you learn about all religions, so you can see what all religions are about, and also forthcoming on that is that you also have more respect for other religions because you know what they are about. So I'm for teaching religion at school, but give an example of all religions so people
as a child
can see what
the whole programming of the children is. The whole thing what is happening here in a sense, your own parents should actually teach you till you're 18 to take that particular responsibility of your own freedom, get you through that as from the level of child, and not taken over by the state, who is the organized programmer of how they should be slave into the system.
Yeah, indeed.
They take over the whole parenting in that sense, and that's where it's going wrong from the beginning.
Well, that's also why I'm against that. One parent should be at home when a child is in the early stages of development.
They destroyed the family.
Yeah, they destroyed the family. They want two people working nowadays because you don't earn as much to provide your family enough. So both parents has to work. Now those children are put in a daycare system. They are almost raised half the time by a 16-year-old that doesn't know anything about the world. So I think that's very bad. It doesn't matter if the father or the mother is at home to raise his child, but one of them should be home to raise his child for a certain time of period. That's what I think about.
Community actually raising the child there, in a sense that you have just people who are truly friends and together as a community.
Yeah.
And the children who are growing up there are just seeing how the community works, and from their own interest they learn their own things. Just leave them alone for their own capability of learning, you know, instead of closing them down like you see in several pictures with a round idea getting cut into a square. So that's your idea, that's the box you may think in. Nothing outside, you know. No, let them. Give them the freedom so they can actually learn how to take responsibility for it.
Hopefully this is the start of the change of this whole thing.
Yeah.
Because the more people that wake up and understand it, surely they're going to teach their children. You know, some people in the chat room might not have had children yet, and when they have children, they'll teach their children different to we've been taught. Maybe the schools is going to be a bit behind, but at home is a good start to how those children are going to think and feel about where they live. It starts with the parents.
Yeah. Indeed, it does.
Sorry, Chris, do you want to just finish what you were saying about what you were doing, though?
Yeah, I'm just trying to delve into the details of the sun and the cause of the flip and stuff.
We're showing
just
Judith.
To kind of get in there.
We've got Judith's pictures up there.
Maybe unshare. Stop sharing that. Because I want to do sunspot. Wikipedia. Wiki's not the best source for information either, but I just want to give people an idea of what it is I'm trying to figure out, so that cancel that.
Well, Wikipedia is just one thing to start your research.
Yeah, it's a good start. It's a good place to start. Yeah, I'll give you a quick idea and some other things to look at, and then go for the original cited sources. That's how I use Wikipedia as a good reference, and then you have the cited sources below that you can get the original PDFs from the original white papers and scientists and whatever.
Yeah.
Application window. This is just to give people a quick idea, though.
Mm-hmm. Then you can build on that further to do your research, indeed.
Yeah, Chris has got people actually sending him pictures as well. Do you know what I mean? So you've got the information, but he's also got real pictures by real people.
Yeah, I get the real. I try my best to get the actual originals. Yeah.
More polarities. I mean, the crossing switch is different.
But this is what I'm trying to figure out, right? Because they like sunspots. We always see sunspots form on the face. Obviously, the face that at least one of the faces that faces us. So I'm making the assumption that although they say that the sun rotates, sunspots will last for weeks and weeks and weeks.
Yeah.
Right. A sunspot. Well, these sunspots, they tend to form, from what I can tell so far, is they tend to form in one spot repeatedly. There seems to be one spot that's kind of biased for a magnetic field of some type, and then they'll last for weeks. Right. Yep. So this set of spots formed and lasted for 2 weeks in February 2011. This set, of course, it formed 13 spots, lasted 13 days during the solar cycle 24. So as far as that's the spot that those two photographers got on roughly the same day within a week or so, it's the same spot. That's all. So there's a cluster of spots taken by two photographers from two different perspectives, and it shows that it's rotating in two different directions, right? Pretty much on the same day. So that's what I'm trying to figure out is, why is the sun appearing to flip on the z-axis when the moon images flip on the x-axis, x or y-axis, right? Because when you look at the moon when you stand on the equator and take a picture of the moon rising in the east, you'll see that it'll come up with, say, the moon is actually pointing up, and it's a half moon pointing up. And then when it sets in the west, it'll set with the half moon pointing down, right? Which is kind of what you would expect.
Yeah.
But on the north-south axis, it flips. So why wouldn't it flip going the other way, right? If you kind of think about it, it should.
Yeah.
Right.
Where is that particular 0 point where you can actually see that?
Where is the flip? Yeah. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Right?
Oh yeah, at
Right.
what angle on the Earth does it flip? Yeah.
Can I tell you something? I don't mean, I'm not changing the subject, Chris, because I want you to carry on, but this is a little bit like the video. I might have to send you Robert's video of the dog and the shadow. He turns his camera upside down, so you're looking at the shadow, not the actual object. You're looking at the shadow of it. And it's only 7 seconds long, but as the dog goes into the shadow, it just completely, the dog flips round. You can't even slow it down to see where it flipped. 1 minute the shadows go and the dog's going that way, and then it's flipped back and it's coming the other way.
Yeah, because the angle you were just for a second you were parallel with the angle of the light above, and then the shadow just flips to the other side. And I'm trying to figure out if that's what's happening here, only on a much grander scale, right? And rather than the shadow being flipped, it's the entire light source and the image itself that's causing that phenomenon to happen due to polarity.
I'll try and find that for you, that little video, just to show you, because you might be very interested in seeing it. You carry on, and I'll see if I can get this video of Robert's up. Okay?
Yep. Yeah, for sure. So this I know this is a globe diagram, but it's just a quick one to bring it up anyway. Maybe this one will work good.
It will be even harder to find than a flat Earth diagram.
Flipped, and then the two ones flipped.
That's
and you see,
right.
Why is this so?
Well, this is obviously talking about. We're talking about the waxing and waning. I was trying to find some images of the moon, pictures of the moon from the equator, or anywhere handy that. I'm sure Judith would have some good pictures. I'll see what she sent me some pictures there too.
Yeah,
But from Israel, right? From Israel, you should be able to see a moonrise where the crescent is actually at the bottom, right, during moonrise, and then during set, it should kind of go the other way. But it would be the same face with the light. Where did the light be coming from? Yeah, it should be the other way around. So that's just some things to look at, right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure that out as to why that is happening. Here's the equator. Let's go straight up from eastern horizon. The moon phases. So yeah, the equator is going to be definitely a good spot. So
yeah,
I'm going to rely heavily on Judith for some research photographs of the moon if she has them. And I'll try to put together a little bit better presentation and explain what I think is happening and why it's happening that way.
Yeah. And also people that are listening to this video today or a couple of weeks from today or months, they can also help and provide some footage.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, if you were standing in the east and the moon is rising in the morning, and you see an image, approximately like this, and then on the same day the moon starts to set in the west, and you see it do this, well, then you have to kind of assume that, okay, well, the sun is now gone behind me, right? It rose up, went through the day, and then it's setting behind me on the other side of this ball. So the light that's hitting the moon should now be hitting the moon in a different place, right? If you move the flashlight behind a basketball, shine it out the left-hand side at an object in the kitchen, right? And then move it to the other side and shine it to an object in the kitchen. Well, the light that hits that object in the kitchen should be on the other side of the object. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. So you shouldn't see the same face with the same craters at the equator ever on the same day. Like the morning moon should show this crater here, And the evening moon, when it sets, should show a different crater here, not the same one, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Theoretically, right? You know, from your perspective, standing on the Earth, right? In theory. At least in my head, that's the way it's working in my head when I try to visualize three-dimensional objects moving in space. That's what I kind of think of as, well, that shouldn't be that way. There should be no flip like that.
Well, you find it out eventually.
Oh, that's very strange.
Yeah. Well, I try to
Oh,
model
yes,
stuff too. Like I'll take it to a 3D model and try to model it, and then they rotate the light to see what happens, right? So I can pop up. Maybe I'll try to do that with this scenario here too. Just not to scale, but just an approximation to show that, well, yes, the light should be switching sides of the object that's being illuminated.
Is in under the magnetical influence on light actually an actual physics in Blender. The magnetical influence on light.
Serious Cat is is everything still all right?
Yeah, mother is coming home.
Let me share that picture too.
For a second, I thought your cat was climbing all kinds of things.
And then the kittens all came out of all corners towards mother.
Here's
Oh, yeah.
where did it save
Yeah,
it?
mother. So she knows where to actually sneak all the food out of the garbage.
Oh yeah.
Parts of fish and then such parts of speck. And, I don't know, chicken legs. Somebody's in a neighborhood or something.
The cats can provide food for themselves if they want to.
Well, yeah, she is used to that probably, but yeah, now she is mother, and she brings it back to the children, and yeah, sometimes I can't.
And sometimes I have heard that sometimes cats also bring presents for their owners.
Mm. Yeah, there are mouses around, so yeah, lately I've had, last time she caught a mouse for kittens, and then they played with it.
Yeah. Well, I also heard that sometimes if a cat catches a mouse, it gives us also one to the owner of the cats.
There's a picture that Judith took herself.
Mm-hmm.
I remember all
from Israel there.
Next to my bed.
Yeah.
And there's the same. That's the same dot, right? That's the same spot. But that's from Israel, so Israel's pretty close to the equatorial line, right?
Yeah.
I know you to get some nice pictures, especially on the Mediterranean Sea there, because it really tends to warp the image and squash the sun and stretch and move stuff around, and yeah, it's pretty cool.
But it's still there.
Yeah. I miss the beach. I like the beach too sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also lived
Yeah,
near the
sure.
beach when I lived in Holland. It was only 15 kilometers, and now the beach is far away. But instead of the beach, I have a big forest. That's also nice.
Yeah, I used to live in Prince Edward Island for quite a long time, long part of my life. Yeah.
I lived near, when I was living in Holland, I lived near Zandvoort. That's a beach city.
Thanks, Judith, for this picture here. It's awesome.
Yeah. And it would be great if you could get as much pictures as you could that you can do in that rendering system and how it how it really works.
Yeah.
Because if you have moon phases from different angles, you can maybe calculate why the moon phase is in every part of the world like that.
Oh, there she is.
Can I just say that it might be worth you just seeing this? I think this is the right link. Series will have to play it because my computer's just too slow. Series, I think that's the dog one. It's only 8 centimeters, 8 seconds long. But could you just play it a few times so people can see it? We'll come back to you in just a second, but I just think you want to see this.
Welcome back, Judith.
Where did you miss it?
Yes, I have a problem.
In the hangout.
Yeah, now it's okay.
Okay. Oh, your internet is bugging. Yeah, I have happened that to me sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, now it's okay. I'm with you.
All right.
Welcome back, Judith. Can you see it in the hangout chat series?
I'm trying to share.
Yeah, and lately I've been really interested in the sun because of the trying to get an eyeball and get a decent count of the sunspot activity and see if it's on a downward trend and just track some of that stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, let me see this here.
Yeah. You never
So
know.
he's filmed it upside down, and the dog just turns around. Did you see that? The shadow of the dog just turns around. Play it again, series. Here it comes. The dog goes up, and it's flipped.
Flips away out of the image.
Yeah.
It is there first, and then it's upside down.
Yeah.
The shadow gets really big and then just goes, and then the dog's coming back the other way. And you cannot. Robert, I know, has tried to slow it down, and me as well. You just cannot do it. You cannot see where the flip happens. It just happens in that one click as it moves. It's flipped.
At light speed, yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Isn't that wild? Yeah.
Yeah.
Now that's blown my mind, because that's one of the first things I saw of Robert's. And then the other one was the tidal pool with the sun miles behind it, and the tidal pool is lower than the sea, and yet you can see the sun in the tidal pool, yet the sun's behind.
Yeah.
Okay, carry on, Chris. I just thought, did you think that was good? How he's caught that?
Yeah, it's awesome that he caught that, because that's exactly what I'm trying to explain. I'm trying to how do you explain that, right? Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm going to save that.
I knew that.
Pages.
I knew that would come in handy one day for something. I just knew it because that just blew my mind.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, yeah, because it's not just the shadow; it's the image itself, right? The dog ran around the circle.
Yeah.
Right.
But he has filmed it upside down. Whether that makes a difference, I don't know. But
well, it's interesting. Like if you look at a mirror, for example, like standing in front of a mirror in your bathroom anywhere, you'll obviously notice that the image is flipped to you, left to right. It doesn't flip up and down, right? The image is actually being flipped on the Z-axis, looking into the mirror, right? On a horizontal plane going away from you. Because if you take an arrow or you put your finger on the mirror, well, then it starts at that point and comes back to you in reverse, right?
Yeah.
Right. Otherwise, if
that's obviously what the sun's doing, isn't it, Chris? It's doing that thing. It goes flick.
Yeah, I know.
They both go flick
So,
in that. And we don't even see it.
There has to be some sort of optical natural law that has a constraint in one direction. It has to be anisotropic in one direction that causes things to have that reference point.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'd be lost. You wouldn't know where you were, because every time you looked at something, it'd be all flipping around and moving around. You wouldn't know what was what. There has to be a point of where it's attached to reality. Like, this is the only way it can go, right? This is the law of optics. It says nothing can flip in this, right?
It would be hard to comb.
So
it would be hard to comb your hair when it was flipped upside down.
Right. So I mean, So that's what I'm saying, right? In this type of research, I mean, there could be a lot of optics that we have not yet discovered, and through our research, we'll be like, well, this is it. That we can call it the Z law, that light can only be flipped in all directions except for Z,
Yeah.
right? On a certain angle, right? And that's the point where it does it, right? And it applies not only to shadows, it applies to the moon, it applies to the sun, it applies to, everything.
One of the dynamics I find really amazing is that, like Chris, as you were talking about looking at yourself in the mirror, my Bible.com logo is backwards. However, my ring is still on my left hand. Now, on the Facebook selfie mode, my ring goes to my right hand. Everything is reverse in a different way than I've ever seen. So like if I'm on selfie mode on my iPhone, it flips it around inside the camera. Not so on a live Facebook broadcast. I don't even know how it does it. It doesn't make sense to me. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Well, Robert, I've just shared that link to that video. Stan Smith wanted to see that, and he's the guy with the 360-degree camera. He wanted to see your doggy video.
Cool. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, thanks for putting that out there too. That's awesome. So that definitely thought provoking.
See, I knew you'd like that, Chris. I knew you'd like that.
Well, it's great because I don't
But
have
what
the cameras. I can see this stuff in my head, but I don't have the cameras and equipment to try to capture what it is I want to try to figure out. Right. So this is great.
What is that you saw then? What is it?
Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out. Right. there seems to be an optical constraint within this realm on a certain axis, and it causes what I would call anisotropic constraint. It's an anisotropic constraint that causes light to go only in a certain direction. So it has a finite thing about it. It can't pass this point of infinity. Otherwise, it would just disappear, right? So light has to exist because there's a constraint on some axis and some point of reference to our perspective in this frame of reality, right? And if something crosses that, it has to flip polarity and go the other way and still exist, right? So the dog ran around the circle. You see it appear to flip upside down and come back to where it started, but you don't see the flip, right? It just does it, but it's so fast you can't even fathom.
Yeah.
But the moon and the moon and the sun and everything else seems to be doing it too, right? Stars in the water, right? It's all the same. It's just fascinating.
Because although it's reflecting, like we've just shown that picture of Roberts with the clouds on top of the water and it's all reflecting, I still can't work out how a sun that's maybe 5-10 miles before the shoreline is in a pool of water that's below sea level in front of it. I don't get that one either. John, I'll tell you what, you've got some more pictures of the sun to show, haven't you, Chris, that you were showing me last night?
No, I went through them there. I went through them with the spots on them.
Oh, I thought you were going to do the one with the sun and the moon.
Oh, that one. I'm still looking at that one.
Oh, okay,
I'm
then.
sure, I'm not 100% sure if it was just a effect of clouds or not, which it probably is.
Okay, then. Well, you carry on.
99 point. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can show it. I'll explain what I'm looking at. I can show it here, but.
Yeah, go on then, and I'll find this picture of Robert's that's been troubling me ever since I met Robert. Oh. Hang on.
It's on my Facebook though, so. Bring that down to the desktop and then share. As I talk to myself, as I click the computers, so everyone can hear my brain work.
Yeah, Karen should have an interlude music before waiting.
Yeah.
Oh, we don't usually have to wait very often.
Play the Jeopardy theme.
Chris, you can do two things. You can play the guitar and turn and do your and present.
There you go. I just wanted to show. This is what I was talking about. The picture here. So this isn't conclusive. I'm not drawing any conclusions. Yeah. Can you see it? It'll take a second to refresh. Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm just trying to figure out whether it's probably coincidence and it's probably the clouds. I mean, that's the probability of it. But I just thought it was an interesting coincidence that the shapes were so close and similar. So this is some more of Anderson's work. He's taken photographs of the eclipse that occurred in South America in February. And since it's such a hot topic these days.
Yeah.
So in the top, we saw the eclipse started. He's tried to outline where he figured the moon was in a circle to give you a rough idea of the size of it. You can kind of see that maybe, and it's really hard to see in that picture, but I might try to do a little bit of enhancing on the saturation to see if those are craters or just shadows of clouds. Because I'm trying to find some evidence that it is actually the moon, right? Show me a picture where you can actually tell or differentiate the moon coming into the eclipse or exiting the eclipse with a bit of a crescent on it anywhere. Show me some proof that that's actually the moon.
What also is striking that the shadow of the supposedly moon is very sharp, and what in my mind, if two objects are much further from each other, you shouldn't have that sharp of a cutout.
Yeah, you would think so. Yeah.
Yeah. This is such a sharp cutout of the sun over here. You should expect that they were much closer to each other. Otherwise, you get an overlap shadow that is grading from black to a little bit to white, more slowly, and not that sharp as you see it here.
So then what I was looking at too was there's a bit of a pattern in the moon object, and then I'm looking at the shadow that's actually appearing to be cast on the face of the sun. So it has a bit of a indentation and a sharp line here. There's a dot here and a dot here. Right, you can see that it looks like that. And then when I compared that to some other photos that he had below, he was trying to explain the difference between a lunar eclipse and a solar eclipse. But when you look at the shape of the moon, right, it has the same type of curve in the shadow. Right, it almost looks like this is the moon behind, right, and we're just seeing it in reverse because it looks like it could just be the clouds and coincidence the way that they've fallen in the picture.
Now, Chris, were you aware of what percent the moon is going to be on Monday?
It depends on what area you're in, right?
Also, with the solar eclipse, the shadow is very sharp, and with the lunar eclipse, the shadow is much more graded from light to dark, not as sharp.
Yeah, so in this, on my live broadcast this morning, to start out, I showed the next week's projected sun and moon appearing and vanishing and moon percent. And next Monday, from this vantage point, it's supposed to be a 1% moon that's going to give us a total lunar or a total solar eclipse. I find that kind of counterintuitive, or at least interesting.
Yeah, you're right. It's all solar eclipses, as far as I know, always occur on a new moon. Always. You never see an eclipse on a half moon or an eclipse on a quarter moon or anything else. It's always on the 98 to 99% of being occulted, right?
Yeah.
But see, on the it says that I'll have only a or we'll only have a 1% moon at this location.
Yep.
So a new moon is how many percent?
One to 2% they consider. It's almost black, right? It's almost darkened out. So there's only a 1% light coming from it.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. It's 99% dark. Yeah.
Wow.
So I mean, you should still. I mean, if you had a good camera with a little bit longer exposure time, right, and you zoom in to where you think the moon should be, even though you can't see it, but if you could just go a little longer on the exposure, you should be able to still pick up, I would think, 1% light coming from the moon source, right? There should be some kind of just even a ghostly type of outline of where it should be, right?
Well, on my photo album, I've got some very very small percent. I think less than a 3% moon I've got pictures of.
Yep. Now, would you be able to capture that during the day, you think? Or during an eclipse? Well, you wouldn't during an eclipse, but would you be able to capture a 1 to 3% moon? Would it make any difference to your photography, like how hard it would be and such?
You know, I've got about 100,000 images to look through to see that. I do believe that I can see a very small percent moon in the daytime. And like you, I'm very interested to see what actually goes in front of the moon, if we can see it. Now, as it was today, if that occurred today, there was too much cloud. There were too many clouds for me to be able to capture it.
Yeah.
And that may be part of the deal. It might be part of the if it is a charade, I don't know. I'm not sure what's gonna happen next Monday as far as what we'll be able to see based on the moisture in the air and that's kind of a big deal, actually.
Yeah. Look, I'm looking forward to seeing what people come up with for pictures and photos and videos. And in this image here, I mean, I'm not saying that that's not clouds. I mean, it could be clouds, but what I'm trying to say is there may, in fact, if that is not clouds, appearing to be causing those shadows on the sun that seem to appear to be the same shape as the craters on the moon. There is a secondary explanation that might be, because there's as remote as it is, there is a possibility that this dark spot seen in the sun image during an eclipse is an electromagnetic interference as the magnetic waves pass through the moon object and cause it to appear in the sun. You know, as a part of light cancellation and aberration because of magnetic interference.
Yeah,
that is it's a remote possibility, but anything is possible, right? So I mean, it's one of two things. It's either clouds causing those to look like the same shape as the craters on the moon, or very similar, because you see there's a dark spot there on the moon with two dark spots, and then the shadows on the sun. Well, there's the two dark spots, right?
They look very much the same indeed.
It's very close, right? It's so close that it's just uncanny, you know. So anyway, I'm hoping to see maybe Robert gets some good pictures of the sun with some filters on and see what he captures, and Bradley and Judith and everybody that's got the P900, Robert House and Matt Gilman. I got a whole slew of people sending me pictures. So
yeah,
awesome.
Indeed. If you could capture that with the P900, indeed, very sharp, that would be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. There, that's my comments on the sun and moon for today. Yeah. I'll stop sharing there. You guys can carry on with.
Chris. The chat room thought about those pictures that Chris was showing.
And thanks, Robert, for the professional input too. Appreciate that. Yeah.
Oh, you're welcome, Chris. Thanks for those images. I found that really interesting, especially the really pretty ones. And yet it caused me to kind of rethink that a little bit. You know, I wanted a camera that would capture more, but capturing more is actually almost like creating something that isn't quite really there, right?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, and it's not so much the camera. What they're doing is they're using even lower resolution images, but they're taking, like, say, 200 of them in 2 seconds, and just super fast bunch of shots, and then they stack them. So it's in essence, it's like a video that you're seeing an entire video, an hour's length worth of imagery in one image. Right?
Yeah.
They stack them. So, and that, I think, is then you start going into more art than actual reality, right?
Yeah, and that's pretty much what I'm calling on that. It's more of not only art, but then it almost kind of falls in line with the fakery that NASA does, right? Kind of that.
Yeah.
That's almost kind of the direction that leads. It's not a reality. It's more like a video game, more like a movie, more like something to give people a false reality of sorts. What I was wondering, has anybody in either the chat or on the call seen the Milky Way in real life look like it is in some of those pictures?
I never have with my own 2 eyes. I mean, I see clear skies in the country.
You can see the Milky Way over here because I live in a place where there's not a lot of artificial light. And then you can see the Milky Way that...
Hang on, there's something come up, I think, for Robert, just to say that a software program called JPEG Snoop to ID camera of origin and composition of images. Oh my goodness, it's gone so quick, I can't see who said that.
Okay.
That was for Robert.
But just to...
I'm just trying to find this picture. I'm trying to find a picture. My computer's going really slow.
Well, Karen, what I did is I sent you the picture that you were talking about. Did it not?
It said the attachment wasn't there.
Huh. Well, that's odd. Let me try that again.
I'm talking about, see?
Mm-hmm. Just to finish, when I look at the Milky Way, I see the Milky Way, but it's not with all the colors. It appears just white.
That's about what I see. That's about what I see here too in Canada, in northern Canada. I mean, it's you don't get all those colors and stuff.
It's basically a black and white picture.
But what we do get in northern Canada is northern lights and aurora borealis that appear far more spectacular to the naked eye than I've ever seen them appear in camera.
Says the same,
which is interesting too, right?
Yeah. Lucky you. Lucky you, Chris.
Robert, if that's the picture, can you screenshot it and just send it to me that way? Because you've got an iPhone. Just screenshot it and send it over, and then I'll send it to Series.
Well, if you go to my cover photos and scroll through, Karen, it's right there, and you'll get a better image.
I'll do it there. I'll do it on my phone.
Live research going on.
Got to find it.
Yeah, that's why we are doing live research. Sometimes you have to wait a little bit to get the items.
Okay, you've got to do the elevator lift stuff now, Artis. It's your turn.
Elevator, sorry?
You've got to sing now.
Do 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 do.
Oh, the elevator signs. Oh, my singing is not that great.
Yeah. Come on, break into some Hotel California or something like that. On a dark desert highway. Let it rip, man.
Oh, yeah.
Rockstar, Chris.
Yeah, Chris is a rock star.
I haven't sang anything for a long, long time. I'm not that good
Got
at
the
it.
picture.
I used to do backup vocals, but I'm not
I can sing an old radio tune from Germany. Maybe that's funny.
1 second. Series, I'm sending you the picture now, okay?
I can sing an old radio tune they played late at night when a late night show was finished. And it goes something like this. Gute Nacht, Freundin. Es wird Zeit für mich zu gehen. Was ich noch zu sagen hätte, dauern eine Zigarette und ein letzter Glas im Steen. Yeah, that's an old song.
Somebody smoking a cigarette in that tune?
Yeah.
Can I tell you one of those embarrassing things I've had to do? I was on a holiday in Ibiza with my kids, and everybody had a few drinks. Hotel where there was a lot of Germans artists, and then this little sort of Spanish man was sort of walking around saying, "Are you going to come up and help me sing?" And I was going, "No." No. And then sort of behind my back, my kids are going, she'll do it. And this man hassled me so much, I don't even know. I just went, oh, all right then. And then basically there was about 100 German people, whatever it was, sitting in this room. And I had to pick up, something and play something and repeat these singing words. And he said one song. But we must have stayed up there for over an hour. In spite of all these people.
Ooh.
But I thought if I could manage that, I could manage anything, because I was so embarrassed, really. But I did it.
Yeah, I never sing in public.
I'll send you the picture.
Yeah, when I was playing and touring around the Maritimes, it was some of the best times I've ever had, and also some of the scariest. But it's definitely a learning experience. If you could get up on stage to do something in front of a crowd, I mean, you'll learn a lot about yourself in a very short period of time.
Holiday, because I'd done it. I'd done something that I would never normally do. Like everybody was laughing at us.
Well, talking in front of a crowd, that doesn't bother me. But singing is something else, because, I don't have a really good singing voice. So.
It's really strange. Like I'm kind of similar. Like it's very strange how our brains work. Like I'm totally, I'll admit it in public, I'm totally petrified to stand up at a podium and read out loud from a script or something, or a book or whatever.
That's no problem.
To read in public.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but reading is a problem. But standing at the podium and talking like I'm doing now, isn't a big deal. Or you put a guitar in my hand, I'll stand up in front of 10,000 people and rip into a solo, with no problem. The crowd just disappears, right? Because I'm so focused on what I'm doing on the guitar, they don't exist hardly, right? They're there, but.
And I have it the other way around. I have it with singing, then I'm too aware of the crowd, and when I'm talking, I'm seeing the pictures in my head of what I'm talking about, and I don't see the crowd anymore. So that's completely the other way around.
I can only be me. There is no acting.
Yeah.
Yay! Well done, Series.
There you go. Excellent. Yeah.
Series, I've sent you the picture. Will you just show the picture to Chris?
Series comes up with some of the most profound things sometimes. Yeah, it's awesome.
He does. So does Patricia. Patricia comes out with some as well. Anyway, this is just a picture, because maybe I'm being stupid, but it's just the sun is behind, yet it's in that water that's below the sea. How does that happen? I just anyway, because then it'd be an angle, won't it? It'd be a slight angle, different angle. I sent it to Messenger, Series.
Yeah. Where is it?
And Judith, can I ask you something? On your pictures with that really red sun, were there any filters or anything, or that just was the colour it was when you zoomed in? Are you there? Or maybe she's fallen asleep. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. But just to tell everybody, if Judith's fallen asleep, she'll watch this whole thing again in the morning. There.
Yeah.
Oh, there's the picture. I'm saying, did you put any filters or anything on your camera, or was that just as it was? Can't hear you, Judith.
Yes, Karen, I have a filter.
Right. It's beautiful pictures though, Judith. Right, that's the picture. It's bugged me a bit, that picture. Because you can see where the sun is on the horizon almost, you know? The sun isn't right in front of us. The sun's back there behind that sort of island, and yet it's in that pool of water.
And that's kind of what I was trying to get at with the stars too, right? Like, you know, we know the water can absorb some of the light into the spectrum, so you end up seeing a little more clear image of the sun in the water than you do see in the sky. But in the star ones, it's the multiple images that I'm trying to figure out, because you shouldn't see more than one object, right? Right.
In a sense, that sun actually looks like it's just above the puddle of water, doesn't it? But if you look at the sea and where the island is, the sun's back there, so it hasn't got to the puddle yet.
What it's doing is the highlight that's under the sun, that bright spot right in the middle, would continue to the single sun in the pool if that sand weren't there. What's happening is the sand just below the spot on the water that's in the middle is interrupting the beam of light. It's like the broken beam. That's what that actually is. And some of my more recent shots on the beach shows the interruption in the reflection, including the moon. I've got the moon reflecting, showing a beam of light, and then there's a break in it, and then the spot. And the break is caused by a slight difference in elevation. There we're looking at a height of probably about 8 or 9 inches of sand at the top of that tidal pool that's interrupting the light beam. So it's shooting over the top of the sand to make the reflection in the tidal pool. That's how that essentially works there.
I know, but my thing is that the sun isn't in front of it like that. The sun is back there on the sea. You can see it shining on the sea. It hasn't actually got to the tidal pool yet, and yet it's in the tidal pool.
Well, I've got some videos. I don't know if I've saved them. I think they may still be there, where I move the lens of the camera a little bit and make the appearance of that sun's reflection move within the pool, like follow it around the edge, so to speak. So
anyway, those one and that one have always baffled me. But anyway, who was speaking?
Well, I just mentioned it was it's a movement of the lens. If I were to okay, the shot right there is directly in front. If I were to move the lens to the right, then the sun would start showing up on the right bank. If I were to move the lens to the left, then it would follow over to the left. Basically, it follows the eye of the observer. Now, as I change the elevation of the lens, the height of it, that would also change the front to back location as well within the pool. That's pretty much how that works. That's where, when I drop the camera all the way down on the water, that's when you can see the mirrored plane mirror really beautifully, like that. Now, I could do that with this tidal pool there too. This one was, the way that works out is it's unique every day. It's different every time based on the amount of the tide, the direction of the wind, and all of that comes into play, that makes each individual tidal array different from any other. It's like, you know, maybe you've heard it like a snowflake. They're always different.
Huh.
Yeah, indeed. There's a whole lot going on when you start taking photographs near water. You know, even the dielectric effect of the salt water itself, the magnetic field that it creates, and the microwaves that the water itself is emitting can alter the perception. Right? There's a lot going on.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's huge, and then I would probably venture to say the action of the sun and the moon on the water as well. The light hitting the water, what does it actually do to it? Now, like on the water jug that I have, if I take a 70-degree water that's basically from the purifier in the house, and I put it outside, if the jug is 1 gallon and it's full to the top, by the time the jug is in the sun later in the day, 1 ounce of water approximately will flow out over the top of it. And as it cools back down later on that night, it'll be visible that about 1 ounce of water is missing based on the expansion and contraction. Another thing too, I mentioned I had some of my frozen vegetable fruit smoothie. I needed to thaw it, so I put it on a plate that had a high edge. I could have used a bowl. Basically what it did is it extracted some humidity from our indoor atmosphere, and then it collects in the bowl, just natural condensation. But, you know, where that could come into play, kind of helpful, if somebody had electricity but didn't have potable water, you could actually use things from the freezer to draw moisture out of the atmosphere, the condensation and that. There are also do-it-yourself ways to extract moisture from the atmosphere, but also in some areas of our country, I don't know if it's worldwide, where they have zoning where you can't collect rainwater. It's illegal to collect rainwater. Well, the kind of rain that we get here, if we had a sustained power outage, I would definitely be looking for some buckets to put under some downspouts, whether it was legal or not, you know, and just something to keep in mind. We may have a time where some of the infrastructure in our area may have a disruption in that. So that's one of the reasons why I don't have to have washboard abs. I don't have to look like a fitness instructor. I'm okay having a little extra fuel on me. I may need to rely on that if we have some supply disruptions. So even like, you know, some people have their stuff stored up. Well, having a body that's got healthy fat on it is also a good option for, you know, to have a little bit of time to not have to get food. I mean, initially, I don't know if any of you have ever done any fasting. I have, and the first day or so, it's a little bit of a challenge, but after a while, it's like really no big deal. At least it wasn't for me.
Indeed, the first day is always the hardest, and after that you get in some kind of flow, and it becomes more easier.
That's correct, yes. And it's actually pretty good for the body to do that periodically.
Yeah, yeah, indeed it is. You can burn some excessive fat, and it's also great for your spirit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because it's also it's the same with bicycling or running a great distance.
Hang on a minute. Is it me?
Yeah, I got a bit of feedback.
I was going to tell,
It's the same with bicycling a long distance or running or walking a great distance. It's also a mentally part in it. You can train for it, but it's also a mental challenge, and that's the same with fasting. It's you can feel your body is getting hungry, but mentally you have to overcome that, and that's also with walking a great distance. If you can mentally put your mind to it to walk a great distance, it's easier.
Yeah, you are what you believe, and there's some underlying truth in that.
Yeah, if you by forehand think, I can't do it, you won't succeed.
Yeah, and in fact, I'm not sure what the timeline was for the fast I was on. I believe that it may have been very close to the time I came to question the globe because of a friend of mine who asked me the question, "Where's the curve?" Nigel Bakes. He posted a comment on my video, and up until then, I really never even thought to question it. So this has been a bit mysterious for me when I've listened to what we've been discussing, and that some people will look into this and they'll quickly decide, oh, flat earthers are crazy people. And other people will go, oh my gosh, they lied about that too. And then they find out that that's the reality. And as far as the schooling you were talking about earlier, so much of the schooling is an indoctrination to teach people what to think, what to believe, and not how to think. And that's critical thinking is something that is lacking for many people.
Oh yeah, it is. Because when I was in the age, I'm a teenager, and I was at school. I have a huge feedback here. Oh, now it's gone. Thanks. When I was at school in the 80s, when I was a vegetarian, I also was laughed and ridiculed, even by the teachers, because when you were a vegetarian, it was frowned upon and you were strange, and they even said it wasn't healthy for you to be a vegetarian. Also, there weren't a lot of shops around to buy vegan food, so basically you had to make products from scratch, like burgers. You have to grind your own soya and put eggs with it and make flavors with tomato juice and everything. So back in the day, even when you said you were a vegetarian, people always were ridiculing that. And it's now the same with flat Earth. People find it strange because they are not taught to think for themselves, and everything is out of the ordinary to them. They ridicule it. So I had my fair share of people thinking that I was strange because I was a vegetarian. Now they think I'm strange because I'm a flat earther. So, well, basically it doesn't affect me anymore.
Strange. We're not strange. You're just used to hearing you're strange. They're strange now. We used to be strange, but we're not strange anymore.
No, they thought that I was strange. I know I was in the right, but...
Yeah, we talk about the lack of proper education and transfer of knowledge and the illusions and what we all observe.
Yeah.
I found an interesting article actually that Mike Helmick actually just put me on to, and this I love Tesla too. So this is actually talking about Tesla, and there's an article on TeslaUniverse.com. where he's discussing the moon, and he's basically shown in his article and through his experiments that the moon does not rotate on its axis at all whatsoever. That the aberration is essentially an effective optics and illusion. But what's interesting, the most interesting I found at the bottom here, when you get to the bottom of the article, he says that motion of this character, as I have shown, preclude axial rotation. The easiest way to free ourselves of this illusion is to conceive the satellite subdivided into minute and entirely independent parts as dust particles. As dust particles, each which have different orbital but rigorously the same angular velocities in that little section. Obviously, was kind of along the same lines of thought that I am now after doing all this research, is that the moon is essentially made of dust and would have some sort of anisotropic properties and semi-transparencies. You're kind of seeing both sides at the same time. Like, so if a person at the north is looking at the moon at the same time someone in the south is looking at the moon, they both see it being 180 degrees flipped. And it appears as if you're looking through a single plane of glass, because it's an identical image, it's just upside down. And that's more likely because the moon is actually not a solid object. It's like you're looking into a screen that is actually a ball, right? Just to take a movie screen and wrap it into a ball, and you look through it from either way, and it looks the same. Which is the only explanation I can come up with as to why we observe it the way we do, right? People in different locations all see the same image.
Yep.
Right. It's very strange. And I think if Tesla, if Tesla was thinking that, then I'm okay with that. I'll agree with Tesla, because I haven't found anything in his work that's wrong so far.
Indeed, and he was a smart man. So.
Smart guy, yeah. So, we all stand on the shoulders of giants, as they say. So go back and see what the old school geniuses of the past were thinking and what they believed, and then pick up on that and go from there. Yeah.
Sometimes, especially when they were ridiculed, they are often in the right.
Yep. And it's interesting that as the moon traverses across east to west, you will perceive that rotation. It actually, in reality, pictures and stuff, you'll see that it does kind of do a rotation, but it's also more of an oscillation. It'll rotate one way and then stop and then go back the other way and start rotating the other way. And I don't think it ever really makes a full 360-degree turn. If you look at it going east to west, it's just kind of rocking back and forth. But if you travel north to south, the image will flip. And that happens to be that's that Z. What I'm right now, I'm just calling it because I don't know what to call it. Is the Z-axis aberration effect, right? It's just on the Z-axis, image is flipped, just like the dog did in the water, right, upside down.
And it also would be cool if they had some sort of drone or satellite following the moon as the phases turn. So that you had the moon, that you would follow the moon with some kind of drone, 24 hours, and see what actually is happening.
Yeah,
that's also what I find very strange with that ISS. You see the sun going past, you see the Earth supposedly, but they never pointed to the moon.
That's true. Yeah.
I never have seen the moon going past.
Yeah, that's because in actual high altitude balloons, the ones that do show the moon, you'll see that the moon is just a tiny, tiny little thing, right? When you get up above the atmosphere plane in the air, level of air that has the magnification effect, you look at the moon, it's just small. It's not very big.
No.
It's like 30 miles big or whatever, and the rest is just.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the other thing too. I don't know if you can see the screen here. I'm going to share the screen, maybe.
Yeah, I've got you
Should
there.
be sharing.
Yeah.
We had talked before, and I know Robert and I have talked when he was on the Hangouts also about, and Dave Marsh also, about what telescopes, lenses, and refracting lenses and stuff are actually doing. They cause people to think things that aren't, right? As the light enters into the, it bounces off the mirrors and stuff, it creates an artificial focal point. You know, I'm sure Robert's aware of how all this stuff works, and he could probably explain it. The focal point appears in front of a smaller lens, takes and focuses on that focal point and magnifies it and spreads it back out again to be observed by the eye of the observer. So it's a magnification effect. You know, people seem to get the impression that, oh, when I zoom out with a telescopic lens, I'm zooming further out into reality. In fact, they're not. They're only changing the resolution of a local more clear, right? The focal point is still only 10 miles away, wherever that moon object appears, whatever altitude that is at, where it appears in the air itself. That's where you're focusing to. And then you're just magnifying the resolution of that to you, right? It's not like you're focusing out 285,000 miles into space. Magnify the light that appears at that focal point within the lens itself.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why, like Dave Marsh and the guys will talk, they sit on the moon and then go over to Venus and it's perfectly in focus. Well, I focus at Venus is, 980 million miles away, or however far it is. But I don't know the exact numbers. But, right?
Yeah, that's
right.
also what I found strange.
Right.
Another guy also did that with the moon. He was a great distance from Chicago skyline, and he focused on the high building over there, the Prudential building, and he focused as much as he could focus from his distance, and he could read Prudential building on that building on the Chicago skyline. Then he pointed his camera to the moon, and it was perfectly focused.
Perfect. Right. So you can only focus to the depth of the medium that you're in, right? That's the limit of the focus, no matter what it is. That's why if you focus on the moon and then sweep it to look at Venus, they're always in focus. Then you drop it to the ground and you'll find it floating on the ground miles away. Yep. Well, that means the image in the sky is still only 10 miles away, right?
Yeah.
Relative.
And he also showed that I don't know how far it was, but it was a great distance. He could zoom further on the moon than he could zoom in on the Chicago skyline. So the moon was apparently more sharp at focus as a skyline about maybe 200 kilometers away. No less. A couple of miles.
And it's exactly it, right? And the same applies to microscopes are focusing, I think it's about 1500x, which is pretty much the same as any high-end camera. But a microscope is the same thing, just turned upside down, right? Mm-hmm. It's focusing down to the small times magnification. Beyond that, I mean, the glass lenses themselves would be so dense or so big that it starts to destroy the image because glass has limits, right? There's nothing clear enough. Same as mirrors. Mirrors have limits, right? Because they have particles and molecules in the glass.
Mm-hmm.
And, so people they think, oh, well, they're zoomifying something 1.5 billion times in atomic microscopy and electron microscopes and this and that, that they're zooming in billions and billions and billions of depths of field into the quantum realm. Well, it's complete. Right? What they're actually doing is if you use take the eyeball of an ant or something, and they have to soak it or actually infuse it with an isotope like gold or other isotope medium, and then they bombard it with microwave radiation, and then read it coming back, and then you run it through a computer, right, to actually get the image. And then they run software on it to say, okay, now they return it to look like the eyeball of it. But they haven't actually magnified anything. They've just altered the experiment. It's not actually an optical image. It's just microwave interference and right? Because optical microscopes can only see so small.
Yeah. That video what I was talking about is from Richie from Boston. I can show part of it if you like.
Sure.
Let's see if I I've already
Yeah,
got
so
it.
the idea that it blows my mind, you know, it's the idea that the human eye can see a moon 285,000 miles away, and why people think that is actually possible. Blows my mind, right?
That blows my mind too. It's let's see. I doesn't. My internet is a little.
It's like Robert says. Yeah, people say, "Here, you're talking like that. They think you're crazy." Yeah.
Indeed. Okay, I have to relog for very far.
Yeah.
Oh, we've lost Artis. He probably pressed the wrong button.
Oh, he probably did.
Oh, there he is.
I'm here again. And internet connection was bugging a little bit.
Yeah, everybody's having the shunty job on their internet. You went a little bit Dalek-like for a moment there, Chris.
Yeah.
Well, I've found it. I can play it. It's from Richie from Boston. He doesn't mind that if I use his footage. I know him, and he's a very nice guy. So I can play the footage and talk a little bit over it. Now you can see the Chicago skyline. And now he's focusing on the Prudential building in the Chicago skyline. And he's zooming in as far as he can from his where he's standing. We can almost read the letters. Prudential building. That's he's holding it in his hand, so it's very hard to keep it stable. But you can see it's you can barely see the text on the building. And now he's going up. And he's he did a shot, yeah. And now he's zooming in on the moon at the same. He's zooming out as far as possible, just like he did on the Prudential building. So this is the. He was totally maxed out on the Prudential building, and now he's zooming on the moon as far as his camera can go. You can see the moon looks closer because he can zoom in further on the moon as he could zoom in on the Chicago skyline that was maybe a couple of miles away.
Gets worse then, doesn't it? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and while you're looking at it, take note that there's not a single meteor strike or anything that goes in a horizontal fashion or skips across the surface.
Where he lives, and he's measuring the distance to the Chicago skyline, so you can get a grasp how far is it away from that place. Well, around you have the Chicago skyline, so that isn't that far away from his home, and he couldn't get the Prudential building over here sharp, but he could get the moon as sharp, far more sharper than the high-rise building. only miles away. So that was very striking for me and very strange. So that also proves that he can zoom in more on the moon than a building that is only miles away. So that also, for me, that proves that the moon is closer than that building was.
It's not only laughing.
It's certainly, yeah.
Yeah.
It's,
I hear this
it's
all the
certainly a
time.
lot
It's not
closer
shocking.
than we think it is. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because he was totally maxed out on that building. He couldn't zoom any further, and he did the same on the moon. And he could see, he could even get more detail. So that the distance, I don't know exactly the distance, but maybe 20 miles or something. And the moon, that's very strange. So the moon, in his perspective, if that distance was 20 miles, the moon is closer than 20 miles away from the Earth.
The moon is close.
Yeah, and this video from Richie from Boston proves it, in my opinion. Also proves it. There are more proofs videos, but I found this video very striking.
Yeah, it was a good explanation, Artis. We've been going now for 3.5 hours. Do you want to carry on for a little bit longer, or do you think that it's sort of about time now, because it's 12:30 UK time in the morning?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm good. To carry on and wait for the next one.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate that so much.
You've all got to come back for a hug, though.
Okay.
That's away if he hasn't got a camera.
Oh.
Yeah, you see, we're all people.
Yeah, big hug.
Everybody can see that.
Oh, the field.
Anyway.
Oh, wait.
Thank you. Chat everybody in the chat. Bit of feedback there. Very sorry about that. It was you, dear. Everybody in the chat room, everybody watching, and everybody on the panel. We really hope that you've enjoyed this evening. And thank you so much, Robert, Chris, for showing everything. Artists, Series, Patricia, you did. So we have a group hug now. Group hug! And one for everybody watching and in the chat room. Thank you so much. And we're back tomorrow with Eclipse Talk. Tomorrow, UK time, 9 o'clock. Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.